Well, welcome everybody. I think the board's here. I don't know if you're anticipating anybody else from you guys, or you're good to go. Also.
We can get going.
Okay. All right. Great. Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's work session is a discussion and presentation on the Boulder Valley Ice facility, the 2-2 permit facility that they've been working on. They have, included in your packet was a design concept that they've been marketing. And they also have a video presentation on some of the marketing stuff that they have on the facility. So tonight we wanted to just have them give you an update on where they're kind of at in the process, and discuss with the board maybe ways we can move forward with the construction of the permanent facility, and have the board ask any questions that you have regarding the permanent facility, and just have a general dialogue with officials from Boulder Valley Ice. Dennis Hefter with Boulder Valley Ice Board is here tonight, along with Luke Taylor. And leave it up to you guys. Go from there.
All right. You want to? Yeah.
All right. You know, why don't we, by the way, I'm Luke Taylor. I am, to give you a little background on myself, I own a place called the Ice Ranch, which is in Littleton. And so we've done one of these facilities before. We're working on a second facility near downtown, Edgewater. And I've been engaged by the group with Boulder Valley Ice to help them make their rink a reality. So I wanted to start here a little bit with our just kind of the fly-through thing. We put this together to kind of give you an idea as to what the finished product is expected to look like, and then we can talk a little bit about the floor plans that I passed out, and then we'll start talking about some of the deal, the way that this deal would have to be structured in order to make this thing actually work. So, do you want to? Is there just let this play somewhere?
Good.
There it is. There it is. but it's basically the same, just kind of divides into kind of sections based on the amenity in there. So if you want to see that again and spend a little more time with it, you can just go to YouTube and go to Boulder Valley Ice presentation, and it's right there. Check it out. So let's take a minute here and run through these floor plans briefly. First page you have is the site plan. This is how we have the facility drawn on the current property. And as you can see, if you look at the little kind of dashed lines there, that is where the existing rink is. So you can see that it's been turned in order to be able to fit in there, because this parcel is fairly narrow in terms of space, so we couldn't get it to face to the west, which was our preference. And then you have parking, 509 parking spaces both to the east and west. And then across that creek that you see where it says Future Rink C, that's just an area that is kind of a catch-all at this point. But it could be extra parking, it could be an inline skating rink, it could be an outdoor rink, it could be volleyball. Excuse me. So on inside first page, this is a 2-rink facility. Each side has fairly substantial seating. There's some more seating on kind of the second level that you can see once you get to that piece. But the rink, the one that's listed as Rink 2, that one will seat 1,585 people, and that's suitable for a junior team to be able to play out of this facility. And Boulder currently has a junior team here, so it wouldn't be a new team; it would just be an improved facility for the junior team. And so you could house up to 1,500 fans there. The other side is 608. Now, if you this little piece over here on the left side where you see all those stands there, that would allow that's a phase 2 or phase 3 type deal, and that would allow the facility to house a higher level junior team, such as an AHL team or possibly a USHL team, which they have different requirements in terms of seating, and that would allow us to grow to that point if in fact that made sense.
I'm sorry, just so I'm clear. So the double lines there, that's the initial phase, is that right? Or
on the left side, this piece right here, this square right here is a second phase. Everything else is first phase.
That square?
Yeah,
Okay.
this square is basically the extra stands.
Okay.
That makes sense.
What level of team was the team out of Broomfield?
It's junior B. Oh, you're talking about Broomfield? That's NAHL. I mean, no, that's Central Hockey League.
And they play against the Eagles?
Yeah, they'd be the Eagles, yes.
And this proposal here would have enough capacity to have a team like that?
Maybe. It's going to be borderline for a team like that. Yeah.
Why don't you describe what junior hockey is? How it is?
Sure.
As a starter?
Well, there's lots of levels of junior hockey, just like there's lots of levels in minor league baseball. And there's the top minor level is considered the AHL, which is the kind of the feeder program for the Avalanche or any of the other NHL teams. And then you kind of drop down certain levels. You have junior teams that are specifically designed for younger kids 16 to 19, and they go from that place where it's a non-paid type league, so they still maintain their eligibility to play college. So a lot of the leagues that I was just talking about are designed for those kids 16 to 19. They typically move away from home. They're boarded in a certain place, and then they play for a few years, and then most of them, or at least the good ones, go on to play like at University of Denver or Colorado College or something along those lines. So that's the type of junior team that we're talking about. Like the Central League is more of, it's a like from a baseball analogy, it would be, a level A or maybe a double A for older pros that aren't good enough to make it to the NHL, but are still, fun to play professionally. Make sense? Yeah. All right. So on this first floor, so obviously 2 rinks. Most of the inside core is taken up with locker rooms. There's locker rooms for obviously different teams or public skating, sticking pucks, that sort of thing, as well as there's a bunch of locker rooms for the junior team, as well as a AAA hockey program, which would be the level below the junior team here, which would be youth hockey, but the higher level youth hockey. If you flip to the second floor, we have a restaurant, a bar and grill that's on the left side, and we have there's a patio. There's basically 3 patios on this, 2 overlooking, 1 overlooking each rink, and then an outdoor patio for people to sit there and eat. The menu would be Italian pizza, sandwiches, salads, that sort of thing. But any type of casual pub food would fit in here. As you can see, there's additional seats that go over the locker rooms that would start here on the second level and work their way down. We have a community room in here behind, kind of in the middle there. It's 677 square feet, so fairly good size community room that will be open to anyone in the community that wanted to have a bridge club or hold a meeting or do whatever they wanted to do. This back area is a turf dry land area, so that would be an area where people can do really any type of training during the winter. And it doesn't have to be specifically for this type of sport. It could be baseball, it could be basketball, it could be football, whatever you want in there. So kind of a turf open area to be able to do some training. One other thing that I'd like to point out on this facility is this facility will have the ability to switch over to turf on one of the rinks. So the rink 2 is set up to be able to go to turf so that you can host indoor soccer or lacrosse as well. And it also gives us the most flexibility to determine which seasons make the most sense to run which sports. So it's not specifically an ice facility. It'll be able to do both. So that is the floor plan. First of all, any questions on that? Okay. And I'd be happy to stick around afterwards if you do have some more questions or suggestions or as to what would make sense. And I think that packet that Matt was throwing out, that's just some more kind of screenshots of the facility.
Actually, I can ask you a question. So, how many parking spots are here?
There are 509.
500. Okay.
As drawn right now. There could be more, obviously, if you use that area by the future rink C.
Mm-hmm. And so you own the ice ranch, is that what you called it?
Yes.
And is this similar to that concept?
This one's big. This is similar in concept, yes. We don't have a junior team playing out of there, so we don't have as many seats there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the main difference between that one and this proposed one.
Okay. And it has the restaurant, all that kind of stuff. And how does that work pretty well for you there?
Works great. That's actually one of the biggest selling points for our facility is parents. They spend a lot of time here, and they would much rather sit there and have a glass of wine or a beer than some snack bar food. And it's a place that they can hang out while their kids are practicing or watch games and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Works out real well.
And how long has the ice ranch been?
2007.
Okay. And you were going to say what needed to happen for this to come to fruition, or is that going on to your
Well,
colleague?
I can jump to that if you'd like, or I was going to kind of give you a little bit of background as to how
Sure.
I see this deal
Yep,
put
okay.
together.
That's fine.
And, and
Your call.
Okay. Why don't I do that? I'll just take a little step back so it makes sense. Or if you guys are already at that point, then I can just tell you what I think it needs.
Well,
Go ahead.
would the board like to hear about some of the components of the Edgewater concept for that?
Sure.
And what that's going to include?
I would even like to go back further and how this has been driven from expanding from one sheet of glass to two, and what those economics are, and sort of what caused you to go this far with this, sort of what the dreams and aspirations have been.
Well, this original facility was a temporary facility that was put up 10 years ago, and it was never designed to be a permanent facility. They always had a hope of getting a permanent facility. And the problem with this facility is they need more space. There are so many more kids and adults in this area that want to play that they have, they're crammed from morning to night. So they need at least two, and they probably need three weeks here. Okay, and then you start throwing in the different amenities such as the dry land, the restaurant, pro shop, all that sort of thing. Those are things that A, keep the customers here, and B, they also provide additional revenue sources so that the rink can stay in business. So basically, there, and Dennis, I don't know if you want to jump in since you've been here
About the history?
well, I don't know how far back you want to go.
Well, that's good. What you've done
Okay,
is good.
Is that fine?
Put it in perspective.
All right. So this was a temporary facility that was designed to be replaced, and they've been working on getting it replaced for a number of years now. And I've known them through obviously my association just in this business, and they approached me this year about becoming part of this and trying to make it happen.
And one of the obstacles through this whole process has been finding a piece of property. We talked about different properties throughout town, and then the town stepped up and purchased the 10 acres for this use. So that helped in just progressing things forward.
Sure. So is that enough, or?
That's good.
Okay. All right, so the way that I see this facility being built is it's going to be a private facility, obviously open to the public, but it's going to be privately owned. That's really the only way that you can get enough money in to build it. There'll be three components in terms of, well, actually four, in terms of financing this thing. You're going to have private investor equity in this. You're going to have a SBA/bank loan to cover the other piece of it. And then there needs to be a civic component. And the reason for a civic component is this is not a high margin business. And without having some support from the city, you cannot attract enough investors, and a bank won't give you a loan basically to put this in. You need to get that number down. This facility as drawn here is about a $12 million, and the economics work such that there has to be a civic component to this. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to do this. So I guess your questions you're probably asking yourselves is, why would we do this? What is the reason? Why would Superior even consider this? And there are two reasons. There's probably more, but the main ones. The first one is obviously recreation for your community. I don't know if you feel like you have enough recreation amenities in town here, but there's a lot of cities out there that that's what they're trying to do, and to be able to get a destination recreation facility that would serve a lot of people in this area and not have to foot the entire bill yourself is pretty attractive. So you have the recreation side of things. The second piece, and probably more important, is the economic piece. This facility generates 600,000 plus visits a year, and the average income of someone who comes here is about $78,000, which is twice what the average is here in the metro area. And there are a lot of cities. I've been personally approached by Parker, Castle Rock, Longmont, Aurora, and obviously Edgewater to construct a facility in their town because they figured this out, that they want a recreation component and want someone else to build it and operate it, and that they want the economic benefit. I'm just going to speak a little bit about Edgewater here. We're right now working on getting another one of these out of the ground in Edgewater, and we expect to break ground in August or September of this summer. And we didn't go to them; they came to us. And the reason why they came to us was obviously the recreation piece, but I don't know if you're familiar with Edgewater, but it's a little teeny small town, 3/4 mile.
5,000 people or
Yeah,
something? It's
yeah,
really
exactly.
small.
Yeah, it's
All
sandwiched
built in about
between-
1960.
Exactly, sandwiched between Lakewood and Denver. And they did a survey of the residents, and the first question was, what do you want in our city? And the number one choice was more recreation amenities, such as a gym or any place that they could do some of that. They didn't have that in town. And but the reality of it from the city side of it is they needed something that could drive more dollars to the city coffers. And so they hired a company called THK and Associates to help them figure out what would be the best thing that they could get there that would try to kill two birds with one stone: economic and recreation. And this THK study, which they did, it wasn't me who did that. They did that on their behalf. So I can't vouch for its accuracy, but they believe in it enough to give us a pretty good incentives to do something on there. But the conclusion was that this rink, it has the same economic drawing power as a super target. So it's that type of level when you consider the number of people that come in here, the number of their average income, and the amount of time they have to spend there. It's not like that they can go and drop their kids off at practice, then drive home, and then turn around and come back. They're there for an hour. They're there for 2 hours. Meanwhile, they're getting groceries. They're getting gas. They're heading. They're buying things, whether it's at our place or across the street. So that's where they really got excited about this, is they figured that this thing would kind of solve two problems for them. And I think you gave that.
Yeah.
You have a copy. Okay, so you can take a look at that. I don't know if it makes sense. Here's what Edgewater is providing for us for this facility. They're providing land. On the land, there's a liquor store and a strip center, so they're giving those to us as well. That land was appraised at $1.8 million. They're giving cash. They're committing to buy daytime ice, which is difficult for us to sell, and they're going to use it for PE classes for some of their kids in school that probably wouldn't have a chance to do a lot of this without some type of support. They applied for an open space grant with Jefferson County and got that to pay for the gym. And then we're also building them a police, fire, and new civic center there next to us on the property. And they're using urban renewal money to do this. They put this into an urban renewal area, and that's where that piece is coming from. And then there's also it's not a done deal, but I think Jefferson County's going to put a library in on this parcel. So it's turning into something similar to what you guys are trying to do here, which is a town center. And they're kind of putting this whole thing thing together. So that's kind of what has been done in the past. Really, to make this thing happen here, there needs to be city contributions between $2 and $2.5 million somehow, somewhere, and it could be, we can think outside of the box. It can be urban renewal, it can be grants, it can be, bonds, what have you. So that's really kind of the nut that needs to be there in order to be able to make this thing happen.
How many visits did you say this facility has right now per year?
I couldn't tell you, Don. This one probably.
This one gets about 500,000 unique visitors a year.
This one's a half a million. Well, then this will be a much higher number.
So that's what I was going to ask you. What would you project if this is completed? What kind of visits would we have then?
Well, if you're getting over 500,000,
I don't think that would double.
it'd probably be.
Just if you could be at the mic, just in case other people might be listening.
Sorry.
So yeah.
Is this mic even on? I didn't. I was just talking.
That's that good.
So 800.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
On the 3,600 turf room and then the workout rooms, would you anticipate those would be open to the public anytime? Or is it a fee, like a membership fee?
It could be set up lots of different ways. What we're doing for Edgewater is like the community rooms and that sort of stuff, that's just free of charge and they can sign up. It's just kind of a first come, first serve for people to sign up. In terms of like the gym and things like that, there would be a membership fee, but it would be reduced for Superior residents, for that sort of thing. And then like the turf, so if the baseball team wanted to use it for indoor training or what have you, there would be definitely a team fee, but it would be fairly reasonable to encourage them to do that.
I had the exact same question in terms of the gym component of it being open to the public and whether or not it was going to be membership-based. I missed the size of the gym.
It's about a little over 3,000 square feet.
Have you entertained putting in batting cages?
Well, yes, and we're actually doing that at the Edgewater facility. We're putting those in. So
Yeah, we've got consistent demand for batting cages.
yeah, so it would be very easy to have it hang down from the ceiling and just drop it down, and you can put batting cages in there for the winter. So there's, it's and keep in mind this facility is not 100%. This is what it's got to look like. If the feedback from everyone here is, we need more of this or more of that, I'm sure we can figure out a way to make it work. So it's this is just the initial. I would say it's probably more than a concept, but it's our initial idea.
So going forward, I guess, how's this going to come to fruition?
Well, so assuming we can get the support from your side of it, we have a bank lined up to do this. There's still some investor spots that we would need to close, but we haven't really gotten to that point yet because we don't really know what the final numbers look like. We do have one main person that's is in for about half of this, and so we're fairly far along that path. Construction we're hoping to start construction early fall and be open for business in August of 2012.
And then on a planning process, we need to, we have a development agreement, draft development agreement, we need to finalize that, and then a site development plan would need to be done for, that would have to go through the planning commission and town board as well.
So let me tell you. So totally exciting concept. Love to see that come forward. I'm sure that we could probably, assuming the numbers would make sense, would love to see that happen. My concern a little bit has to do with the site plan because this does not look like the site plan that we've looked at before, and it eliminates everything else on that property essentially except for what the town owns on McCaslin. So I guess I'm not sure how that would impact us financially. And we've had some thoughts that we would love you to run a whole bunch of tournaments where people would come in from out of town and stay with us, but we can't get a hotel on this site now.
No, not on the 10 acres.
Well, with the parking and everything.
Right. The hotel that's been discussed has actually been, the site that's been looked at for that is where the existing pond is, which you see right above site plan A, or see right above that. That would have to be moved, and then that's kind of the area that's been discussed for a hotel.
So that's, those are my concerns, because I think that this is its prime location to have a hotel. It actually is, your facility would actually generate a whole bunch of revenue for that if you could have people come in from out of town, but we need to make sure that all fits on this general piece of property somehow.
Well, we drew this based on kind of our needs. It's not really,
Sure.
it's not taking into account what the city's needs are, and obviously we will need to address that to make this work. And basically, I haven't been to the other,
Sure.
site planning meetings, and so I'm not really sure exactly what you had intended for the rest of this parcel. I know there's Takima Town Center. I know there's a Taco Bell, proposal floating out there. I know the guy's trying to sell the other land around there, but we can easily redraw this.
Okay. And what would be would be the association between the foundation or association, whatever the hockey program is called, and this rink? Would they be an investor in this?
They would be a major tenant and probably an investor. But they have to figure out, they have to keep their nonprofit status for the hockey program. But yet, building a private facility is just not possible in this day and age with donations. So the rink has to be for profit.
Right. So you would carve out some actual physical location, which would be the nonprofit part of the foundation, or have you thought about how that would be structured?
Well, the foundation would be primarily a tenant. They would have an office space in there, and that sort of thing. But it's built for them to play in. So we do this with like an association, Littleton down south, that they're one of our primary tenants, and
They just pay for ice time.
pay for ice time. So, which is kind of what they're doing right now. It's just internally, they collect fees and then transfer money back and forth to support the rink.
And I don't know if you've had conversations, we've seen things from Impact Sports that are not ice, but have some concepts where they like to have these training facilities as well, and whether or not you've had any conversations along those lines at all?
Not recently. No. No. The Explore group. Yeah. No. And the time frame with their schedule and what they're trying to meet and what that schedule is, may not work as well on top of that.
I think it'd be good at least to have those conversations because, the training facilities that you have outlined here are similar to the training concepts. They were talking more baseball and those types of things. But,
Right.
Would there be a way to somehow join forces where, it would be mutually beneficial? It would be good to have that conversation sometime.
And we're doing that in Edgewater. So we have this bottom part. If you look at the piece where they put this training rink in here, that's in the Edgewater one is a turf area. And that's set up for like Impact Sports.
And so in terms of that part of the rink, would you say that during the winter season, there'd be 2 sheets of ice for the season and then you drain one of it and put flooring down, or this is like the Pepsi Center where you lay something over
Well,
it?
you can lay it on top, so you can go either way. So it depends if it's a short-term solution, like let's say you wanted to run a Christmas soccer tournament. You can put it in and just put it over top for Christmas. Or if it's going to be a long-term deal where you say, you know, we're going to run a 3-month lacrosse season. You would melt the ice, and it would be a cement floor under there, and then you would put the turf on top of it.
And have you done that yet, or?
I haven't done the turf part yet, no. But it's we're working with the Mammoth, and they're one of the groups that are. I think we're going to get their turf that they had in the Pepsi Center last year, and I've gotten down and spent some time with them on the transition from a hockey game to a lacrosse game, and it's a lot of bodies and a pretty beefy forklift, but other than that, it's pretty easy. It's just you lay it down and Velcro it together.
Okay. And then, yeah.
That was just one of the pictures you had here. Is this a bowling alley, or are you thinking?
No, that's an aerobics room, and that's the balance ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got excited for a minute.
Gigantic
Yes, it is a super big
I thought it was a
It was up close there. I couldn't tell.
And I think my last question is just more curiosity. How do you control energy costs in an ice rink? It seems like you must burn through a lot of electricity.
We do, and we are one of the, we do anything that we can to cut that number down, because, there's the 3 biggest costs for us are debt service number 1, payroll number 2, and then energy costs. So how do you control it? Well, you're still going to spend a lot of money no matter what you do, but we try to do anything that we can to be, I guess green would be, even though we're not trying to go in as we want to be a green facility, we're coming at it from the other side of, okay, if we can save money doing this, we will. So, it's everything from the compressor system that we bought. Most ice rinks, they go and buy a compressor from, there's a couple companies in Canada that makes specific ice rink compressors. We went and we bought a commercial unit from Carrier, which is designed for office buildings and apartment buildings. The advantage for that is it's a piece of machinery that's modified for an ice rink, but it has about 30 years more worth of technology compared to the ice rinks. They build 10 ice rinks a year, so there's really not a lot of incentive to change things around where these people are building apartment buildings, office buildings, that sort of thing. So we can go in with something like that. This allows us to use about half the amount of energy that a typical ice rink would use if they used some other system. We max out on the insulation. We use energy efficient lights. These roofs are set up for solar. So I could give you a huge list of the things that we do. I mean, everything from, we put a solution in the water that freezes in there, that allows the water to freeze 3 degrees higher than what normal ice freezes at, which reduces costs. We have sleep modes on our compressor. It raises the temperature at night and lowers it down during the day when you need it. So there's been a lot of thought into the energy side of things, because that's such an expensive part of our operations.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
It's an exciting concept.
Yeah,
Looks really good.
yeah. Well, we'd like to. It's this area really needs it. This is the place. People drive 30, 45 minutes to come to a place like
It
this.
would become a regional draw, no doubt.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak at all about the history of the association at all? People curious about that?
I can. Hi, my name's Dennis Hefner. I'm president of Boulder Valley Hockey Foundation, which runs Boulder Hockey Club, which is the youth program that we run. We have about 320 kids that play in this rink over here competitively. And then, as Luke said, we have a junior team, which are kids, 90% of them from Colorado. Some of them come from out of state. They are ages 16 to about 20. And then all the other programs that we run over there, Learn to Skate and figure skating and things like that. So I joined Boulder Hockey personally in 1997 when my 2 boys were young. At the time, we didn't have an ice rink at all to call our own. We used some ice up here at the YMCA, and we used some ice at the Colorado University Rec Center. And as hockey became more popular, we kept losing ice, and we kept having to shrink our program. So I don't know, this is Phil Paolilli, by the way, he's on our board. He also is the president of CAHA, which runs the whole league that we're in. And he's been around Boulder much longer than me. But and around the late 90s, we got together and said we either need to merge with another association or we need to build a rink because we just don't have the ice. And as our kids got good, they would scatter to other programs. I'd say there was 8 or 10, maybe 12 of us that got together, threw some money in a pot, and got lucky with a lease over here from George Mankick and put a shovel in the ground and built this temporary facility, which opened in, help me, 03? 03, yeah. So the plan was always to have a 2-sheet facility, a permanent 2-sheet facility, and actually the whole front of that building where the lobby is built out of wood. We've replaced the floors, and I mean it was meant for 3 years, and it should have been there for 3 years, and we're on year 8 now. So Boulder itself, though, has gone from 150 kids to 320 roughly, and that's kind of the max you can put on a single sheet of ice. So we've been maxed out for about 5 years. We have also gone, out of about 10 or 11 associations, we've gone from clearly and unequivocally the worst competitively to the second best in the state, the best in the north. That's because of the rink, and that's because of a hockey director we brought in and some good coaches and stuff like that. So hopefully that's a good history.
Yeah, great, thanks. Any other questions? We should probably talk then next steps. Have you come up with some outline of how you think this should proceed in terms of understanding more detail?
Well, the biggest next step is financing. I think we have the development agreement that we'll work through with Boulder Valley Ice, and get that to a point where we're comfortable with it, explore financing options that we can present to the board to consider, and then go from there. But those two things, I think, need to happen first.
And I love the optimism for August 2012.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I wonder if that's reality, or I'm not sure. That seems like that's pushing the envelope a little.
Well, there's a couple reasons for that. One is if we can build 2 of them at the same time, our costs drop by 5 to 10% on it. So that's why we're pushing to do this. The second part is it's going the part that's going to hold it up is the civic side, getting everything through planning and all the rest of that. But our first facility we built in 7 months. So and I don't know if you remember the year we had all those blizzards every Friday. It seemed like coming in. That's when we started. So we started at the beginning of right after Christmas, that first blizzard, and we were up by August. So we can build it pretty quick. We've got all of the, obviously there's going to be some changes, but we've got all the blueprints done. We've done it a couple times. This one down south, and my partner in this owns a construction company, so he built one up at Gunnison a couple years ago for the city up there. And so we've kind of got everything figured out and ready to go. We just have to get the deal taken care of, and that's going to, as fast as that can happen, I think we can do it. So you're right, it might be too optimistic, but it certainly is a good goal to shoot for.
Yep. Okay. So, staff meeting, you'll be meeting with staff and talk about finances, layout, what the connection would be for future town center developments, how that may or may not make sense. Is that sort of what you envision?
Yeah.
And then also, it seems to me like there should be some discussion either among staff or I maybe invite a couple of representatives from ProStack at least to go through that list of unmet needs that's out there. For example, I think batting cages probably is on that, and if to the extent that this can address some things potentially, probably would be a worthy conversation.
Sure.
Okay.
Glad to see that the meeting room is still in there. Thank you.
We've always wanted that.
I'm a board member, but I wanted to just talk from a Superior resident's perspective. John Sales.
Thank you.
1305 South Pitkin Avenue. You guys touched on the foundation, separated from a for-profit organization coming in like Luke and doing this. Being a part of the foundation with Phil back in the day, and raising money, and things were good, and the economy was strong, and people needed deductions against their big capital gains. It was a little easier. Because we really wanted to do this as a foundation without Luke. Hire guys or a design build person like that. But it's just been very, very difficult. So I want you to know, as the kind of head of fundraising on the board and a Superior resident, and there's a lot of passion behind doing it, but it's just a lot more difficult than I think we all expected it to be. So I just thought I'd give you guys a feel for that. I also thought that it'd be interesting to know there's a lot of Superior families that participate in this rink, and it's not just the teams, it's not just junior A hockey. It's Skate with Santa. It's the Learn to Skates, and there's a lot of Learn to Skates, and there's a lot of rec skates, and there's a lot. When you go out there, you can see a lot of Superior families having some fun out there, which is, I think, great to see. I know that if we did build a 2-rink facility, and again, I'm on the foundation side, so I'm not really looking for gain or profit here, but we run a very competitive association. So there's a lot of competitive teams, and people are coming, and kids and families are coming from all over the state to participate, because I think we have the best hockey director in the state, as Dennis mentioned. But I really think it's important that you realize that if we do a 2-rink facility, there's the chance of having a house league that would be a little bit more laid back than the competitive nature that we have today, and having some time for kids to be introduced to a really cool sport, an Olympic sport, and figure skating, which we can't do, and a little more women's hockey, and a much bigger adult hockey league. A 2-rink facility like this, and hockey tournaments and hockey camps. I mean, to have a hockey camp in Superior, Colorado, with the attraction of Boulder over the summer, I mean, the parking lot is full all the time already as it is, but it's an amazing attraction to be right on 36 and everything else. So we've tried corporate sponsors. We've said, hey, there's thousands of cars that go by this every day. We've asked for signage. We've asked for, we've gone many different ways to try to do what we could to get this thing going. And thanks to Luke and the opportunity, and any help that we can get from you guys would just be awesome. And I moved to this community. Don't tell my wife this, but I'm a Canadian, and I love hockey. And this rink was a huge attraction, and we love living in Superior. But I know there's a lot of families that also moved here because of this rink, so I can't imagine all the people that want to move here if we have 2 rinks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anything else from you, from staff, from the board? I would summarize this as a positive meeting, and looking forward to exploring this some more.
So should I work with Matt then?
Yes.
Sit down and see if we can brainstorm and come up with a way to make this work.
That sounds good.
All right.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank you for coming.
All right. Let's see. Do we have anything else to talk about in the work session? Yeah. Right. Yes. Exactly. He has consumption or something. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Should I call? Yeah. That's good. Okay, we'll put it up. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks again, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Bye. Did you want to go over
Your digest?
digest at all, or next
I
meeting?
took that off the work session. That was something Scott had implemented. It seemed kind of redundant to me, but I'm happy to, if you have any questions or if you want me to go over it, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
So it's redundant with the look ahead, you're saying?
Well, I mean, it's something you get on Thursday, so I'm kind of just rehashing the same information you've already read.
But yeah, I mean, I
there's
agree.
another
It's
purpose.
for the public. Maybe we can do it during the manager's report.
Sure.
Hit the highlights, sure.
Because I think people, it'd be good for people.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we have a few
5
minutes.
Wow.
Amazing. Okay. Well, we'll be back at 7 then. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for May 23rd, 2011. Lois, if you call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elia Gregores,
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli. Here. Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Maglia.
Here.
Town Attorney Kenneth Here.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Gregores. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Anybody would like to start this evening? Trustee Pennington?
I'll go ahead. Had several meetings this week. Louisville Library Board was one of them. I'm pleased to say the book drop finally has been ordered. It hit a bit of a snag in terms of the purchase process over in Louisville. Was ordered last week, is expected to be here 4 weeks from that date, so mid-June. So we are impatiently waiting for that. I'll let Deb address. June 8th is the reveal date for the title of the book that will be featured on the same page. And Deb will go into the whole rest of that. We had a item on the agenda that was approved that allows Superior and Louisville businesses, private businesses, to now use the meeting rooms at the Louisville Library. Up to this point, it's been reserved for nonprofits from both communities to use the meeting rooms there free, and I'm not sure how many of our residents even knew that residents or nonprofits could meet free, and now that's been extended, at least on a pilot basis, to businesses until they run into any snags. So just wanted to notify people of that. Had a historical commission meeting. On May 7th was the walk-through Superior. 40 people participated. I thought that was a nice number. We had further discussion of the Veterans Memorial in Asti Park. That's been, they've been asked to consider, so that's making slow progress. I would imagine that's probably going to become a reality. And in that vein, it was brought up again, a possible program of bequests and memorials for the town of Superior that could target contributions, et cetera, to the Historical Commission, or it would be pertinent to the bleacher discussion at the last meeting, to where people who want to remember a loved one upon death, or if you win the lottery, you could make bequests and donations. So I'm not sure what the foundation of that needs to look like, what the structure of that needs to look like, but Patrick participated in that meeting, Matt, and maybe if you would on a staff basis raise that. But I got the Louisville Historian, which is the publication of their historical commission, and on page 10 of the last issue was a full double-sided page of bequests and memorials to the Louisville Historical Society. So I think it's definitely worth considering. Went with Deb to Dr. Cog. She's the primary, so I'll let her discuss that. I'm going to applaud Golden's decision, as many of you read in the newspaper, to put in a $3 million offer for the Jefferson Parkway, a counteroffer to that the Jefferson Parkway Highway Authority has put in. I think that is probably only good for our interests, and would invite the mayor if you wanted to discuss or mention the initiatives that we're taking. I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss those, but to definitely assure our residents that we too are doing our, putting forth our efforts in the vein to protect our residents from that as well. So. But I was very pleased to read that in the paper. And then I want to throw out there, I don't necessarily want to delay everybody's reports, but at the end of the reports, I'd like to discuss the road construction project. As we all know, there was a newspaper article in the paper, Boulder Daily Camera, on Saturday, And over the citizen communication, it's drawn some criticism. And in light of that, and certainly my own concerns about certain aspects, I wanted to address two things and certainly extend it to whatever else comes up. I think at minimum we have a communication challenge regarding residents' understanding of the nature of the project. And I met earlier this evening with Kurt and Matt out on site in Sagamore, and we discussed possibly some aspects of putting out an e-blast that clarifies the nature of the project, what the intent is of that project, and why we're doing it, and why we're doing it in the way we're doing it. And then the second part of what I hope we could discuss is the broader issue of the scope of the project. And I'm prepared to address more points on that later when we get back to it. But I wanted to possibly reserve a time at the end of
Sure.
the comments to bring that up.
That's fine.
That's all.
Trustee Gregoris?
Yeah, Matt, I was wondering if you can maybe make an announcement about Charlene's funeral for those that may not have known that she passed away on Saturday. And obviously our condolences from the board. It's a very sudden and, abrupt departure, and our condolences to her family. But if you have the location and the time.
For those who haven't heard, one of our former employees, Charlene Sciolino, died this past week due to complications with the
From-
procedure. And she will be missed, and those services will be, they'll have showing Wednesday from 1 to 4 p.m. at Avalon Mortuary, which is in Lafayette. And then Thursday's funeral services at St. Louis Church, which I believe is
It's in Louisville, yeah, downtown Louisville, yeah.
And that time for that is 10 a.m. on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Williams?
So I attended a open space advisory committee, and we basically discussed the meeting that we're going to have in June with the board, having dinner and discussion between the board and the entire OSAC, Open Space Advisory Committee. We also discussed the 5-year trails plan and the priorities of those, and which ones would come from the open space tax fund specifically, and just as a recommendation. We're not done with that, but when they are, we'll bring that forward. And then I also attended a Dr. Cog meeting, which is Denver Regional Council of Governments, and let's see here. One sec. So the board, for that particular board, we adopted a 2011-2012 strategic plan, and that outlines the board's priorities for the coming year. And we, in February, I think it was, maybe it was March, I think it was February, we had an annual workshop where 70, or I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 different governments all come forward and sit down together and discuss what our priorities are and what we want to see happen for the Denver Regional Council of Governments. So that was one thing that we adopted, the strategic plan. And then there was also a transportation improvement program. We call it TIP, and there was an amendment on that for 2008 to 2013 and the 2012-2017 TIPs. And a bunch of other things that really don't mean anything to us, so I will move on. And then the library. I am on a publicity committee for the On the Same Page One Book program, and that is 3 towns working together. That's Louisville, Lafayette, and Superior, all working together on a one-book program where, all three communities read the same book. And then we have many different events planned. And so we have one event planned that's coming up June 8th. It's at 6 p.m. at the Harney-Mustoka Open Space. That's the one in Louisville. It's on South Boulder Road and Highway 42. This is a kickoff event where we reveal what the book is and what some of the events that you can come to throughout the summer and the fall. And also at that event will be a kind of a publicity event where we have all three mayors from Louisville, Lafayette, and Superior pose for a photo with the book and have a read poster. So if you've ever seen in the libraries the read posters, that is exactly what we're going to be creating that day. So it's very important. All three mayors show up and
That's been coordinated.
be a part of that. I know you're already planning on going, so that's great. And this is open to the public, and you can go to the Louisville Library website and see on the same page. And there's a little logo. You just click on that, and it'll tell you all the different events and where to go. And then also I wanted to mention Golden's offer to put up $3 million, up to $3 million, to buy the right-of-way for Rocky Flats as a bid against the Jefferson Parkway. So there's two bids, and we'll see where that goes. And we give full support. I certainly do. And I was very, very excited to hear that they moved forward on that. And I hope that we can continue working with them in the future, and as we have been. And we'll see where that goes. And I'm sure that will help us in one way or another. If it doesn't help in one way, it's certainly going to help us in another way. But anyway,
Okay.
I'm done.
Let's see. As a segue to the Jefferson Parkway Authority and our concerns with that, we have a variety of concerns: traffic, impacts on town, and safety for people that would be driving through construction zones out in the Rocky Flats area. So we've sent the Department of the Interior and Fish and Wildlife Service our concerns about transferring that property without fully understanding what the health and environmental impacts of construction out there would be. So I don't think that we've heard back from them necessarily yet. I've become aware of an email from CDPHE to Broomfield that say that they have concerns about this particular issue, and that Congressman Polis's office is actually sort of hunting that down for us, and I am greatly appreciative of their efforts on our behalf. And we have sent the Parkway Authority also a letter that we think that part of the construction for the interchanges would be in the town of Superior, and thus they need to comply with our permitting process. And I think the board has been copied on a letter back from them. It says, we're not building anything in Superior, so we'll let you know if we do. So I take that to understand, to believe that they don't actually understand where the property lines are on 128. So I'm sure that we'll be willing to share that with them sometime. And I think that's kind of where we're at with the Parkway.
Can I ask you?
Yep.
Could you elaborate a little bit for the public? What would be the benefit if Golden is successful in purchasing the right-of-way?
So the Department of Interior owns property on the eastern border of the Rocky Flats technology site, which is now called something else, environmental. Maybe you can help me out with what that's called anymore, but the former nuclear weapons plant and the
Wildlife
cleaned up
refuge.
area. What's that? It's been
Wildlife
transferred.
Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
No, the wildlife refuge is
Is-
where the property is.
Right.
Okay, what's the...
The
what
hot
do
zone
we
is
call
called
it?
something else, you're right.
That's the
center.
Industrial.
That's the industrial area. So either way, part of legislation that was enacted when the wildlife refuge was came to fruition is that there would be 300 feet of right-of-way that may be made available for transportation improvements that everybody has thought would be going to the Parkway Authority. And so Golden's take on this, well, it just says transportation improvements and a bikeway will qualify. And so they sent a proposal, my understanding is, to Fish and Wildlife about that. And Fish and Wildlife Service is now going to have to contemplate how to deal with that. And if they take the Golden's offer, then I think it would be very problematic to build the parkway there. So, because there's not really other land.
Okay.
So, let's see, I attended US 36 Mayors and Commissioners talking about the design-build project for the US 36 corridor for bus rapid transit and high occupancy vehicle lanes. And that's still in process. There should be a report, I think, in September regarding that. And I think my only other meeting was with urban drainage, and we didn't have any projects there, so I don't think I'll report with that. And I share the same issues from Trustee Gregorius about Charlene. It was terrible to hear about her loss. So, Trustee Skumats.
I attended a couple of meetings. One was, first I wanted to say how happy I was that pretty much every other time that I drive by the former skate park, now pickup basketball court, that there's somebody on it playing pickup basketball.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy about that. It was what I hoped we would have happen. Very happy about that. Okay, so meetings. We had a CML policy meeting, and in it we reviewed the policy statement that was developed, and communities gave comments on it. I'm happy to provide that statement to two other board members, but it mainly restates the main kinds of things that CML takes into account when it supports or opposes legislation on a sort of overall principles basis rather than sort of one-on-one thing. But the overall principles, things like, maintain local control, no unfunded mandates, that sort of stuff. But just, which they like to call it, my favorite was state fiscal fair play. So in any case, but I thought it was useful to know that they also have stands on housing, on initiatives, on employee benefits and water and energy and some of the things. And if those stands or whatever are of interest to the board, I'm happy to forward that information to them so they know kind of where CML comes from when it establishes its policy stands. It's not sort of random or reactionary, but rather pretty deliberate. The next, I attended a RCAC meeting, and the RCAC meeting had two main things on the agenda. One was a zero waste plan, and the other was the Boulder County zero waste plan, of which Superior would be a part. And it's not a mandatory plan. It's not a thing that requires us to do specific things, but rather, in a sense, was an analysis of what kinds of things would make a lot of sense in this area, and Superior could join in or take part or implement some of those various kinds of things. They'll be looking for that plan to come before the board shortly after review by the RCAP committee, and hopefully have that endorsed this summer sometime.
Great.
We also had a meeting on a program. We heard about a program for how we might deal with, it sounds like a really boring subject, but it's important. So waste cooking oil, because people should know that putting waste cooking oil down your drain is a way to clog your drain. So we're looking into whether this particular program makes sense, and it would be something that I believe is zero cost to us, it looks like. But there are a few things to investigate to make sure it makes sense. But the reason that it's particularly apropos now is because we have our food waste down your disposal program called Wash It Down program. And the one thing that we say not to put down there is the cooking oil, which sort of leaves people with, well, what do I do with it? So this would be a way to do with it. It would be co-located with the yard waste drop-off site, which maybe we'd get increased traffic there too as well, and all that sort of thing. So anyway, that's that. The other, we had the spring cleanup that was not quite as much tonnage as I think, from my observation, probably not as much tonnage as we usually have. I do think the rain had a lot to do with that. Yeah. And then on Saturday, I went to the hazardous waste, or the hard to recycle event, and we had quite a lot of traffic there, which was really good. People seemed, again, very happy with it. The people I spoke with were really pleased with that event. And I think we have good turnout. The last thing I wanted to mention was that I did have a coffee buzz on Saturday, and I wanted to mention that, some people come down, but not as many as might. So the next one is going to be electronic. So the next one is going to be, I'm going to do it as a go-to meeting, and you can either come on computer or you can do it as a conference call, and that number will be posted. And I'm calling it a jammy one, so you can come in your pajamas for all I care. And that's going to be, I'm going to try 2 different times. So it's going to be on Thursday, June 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. for those who need it sort of weekday, evening, whatever. And also Saturday, June 11th. You can find in the morning as my usual ones are. And I'll make sure and post those for folks. And you can also you'll be able to find the links and the access information on my votescumats.org website. That's where I post sort of election or town boardy stuff. I think that's everything.
Is this kind of like Communicator where you just type in what you want and
People can view if we want to talk about anything. We can have documents up on the thing and everybody can see them. People can chat in questions if they want, or they can talk for questions. And I'll just be on the whole time. People can come on for 5 minutes and leave, or they can stay on the whole time. It doesn't matter.
Interesting. Trustee Strelly?
Oh, and I do want to say, I thought it might be a good test for how we might consider doing town meetings in the future. If it works well, then maybe that's the way we do some of our town meetings if we can't get bodies into the location. So, anyway.
Yep. Trustee Strelly? If you can speak.
Yeah, I'll do my best. There was a meeting this morning here at Town Hall with Trustee Hanson and Williams also attended, and I did, and town staff and transportation members of Louisville and Thornton. And it was bagels with Barry, so we got a free bagel. I brought my own coffee though, and it was interesting. And a good chunk of the discussion was the double diamond diverging intersection concept that CDOT has fallen in love with. And they're really interested in seeing us pursue that. And so we'll see. I can even begin to try to explain it. There is a YouTube video that you can...
Several, actually.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Figure it out.
Well, yeah, I think I couldn't figure it out. I think you have to do it
Yeah.
and hope you
You're right.
survive. And then if you do, you know how to do it. If you don't, less population to worry about. But, no, it's fun. I'm sorry.
Well, and
Are you taking cold medicine?
It's really interesting. They're doing it in Utah, and our DOT head of CDOT drove through Utah, and now he wants Colorado to catch up with Utah. So
it's also in Missouri, near St. Louis.
Right.
And I'm going to Bloomington, Indiana this
You're gonna
summer,
go through
so
it?
I'm going to go through it.
so if you're not back,
I had an
We're
accident.
talking,
Well, and the concept is it's kind of a crisscross. So you cross to the other side, like as if you're in London, and then you go back to the correct side, and everybody's doing that. So it's
yeah.
pretty.
But immediately came to
Wow.
mind, not to put it down, but I was suggesting that we consider figure 8 roundabouts, but
speaking about that, though, and I think I had an electronic conversation with the town manager. Is that cool concept? Love to see it work here. Not sure how it works with bus rapid transit and the.
well, that was part
Oh,
of the
we talked
discussion.
about that.
They had some discussion about it.
Yeah.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
And they were talking about similar type of concept is what you see with the new RTD stops over by the First Bank Center off of 36.
So basically, you
Similar to
They
that.
they actually never leave 36.
Yeah.
right. The bus merges off to the side of the road, picks all its passengers up, and then merges
You
back
have to
on.
see it on YouTube,
Never
but
goes
it
off
actually
the
flows.
interchange.
It does work.
Yeah,
It-
so
it
that
flows. It's-
that would be a whole redesign of the US 36 EIS to have that happen because it's not included in that. So of course, there's CDOT,
But
they
if CDOT
probably
is-
redo the
Oh, I'm sure
EIS.
they're more than
But I'm not
They
sure if
already
it's-
dismissed that. At
They
one
did.
of our other meetings.
Yeah,
About dismissed what?
They thought you could do that. They thought you could do that design under the current EIS.
To have the pull off of the bus at the.
The diverging diamond, which would.
No,
Yeah, I
I think I
understand
can sort of get
BRT.
that, but
Yeah.
I think the change would be the
The BRT.
BRT,
Right.
and because that's not how BRT works on 36. So
there's a lot of study that remains to be
study
done.
needs to be done.
But actually, CDOT even mumbled about being willing to contribute money towards the study.
Yeah, we have commitment from them to
Hmm.
contribute towards the study for
So they're excited about
consider
it.
that one design. So that's good.
Yeah, that is.
And I think Thornton and Broomfield will probably be the first in the Denver metro area to put one in. It looks like possibly at Highway 7 and I-25.
Oh yeah.
Matt, wouldn't they be, you said the first in the Denver metro area, but only the fourth in the country, right? You said that there was only 3 others in the country.
Yeah.
That's what Gene said.
Is it?
I told
thought
him
there
I've
was more
never
than
seen
that.
one before, I don't think. He said he probably have because there's only 3 in the country.
Oh, I missed
They're
that.
coming in Utah.
Yeah.
There's one that just.
Yeah, I may have said that, yeah.
There's some. in
And Grand
France,
Junction
apparently.
is considering one also.
Anyway, that was interesting, and I got a free bagel. With respect to Rocky Flats, the next Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting is Monday, June 6th. It's at the airport, Rocky Mountain Airport. Starts at 8 a.m. It's a public meeting. The Department of Energy is supposed to brief in that meeting how they sampled soils on that portion of the, at that time was called the buffer zone near Highway 128, between, not highway, through
Indiana?
Indiana and the, between Indiana and the industrial zone of Rocky Flats. And so, public is welcome to be there, and they too have free food. And so, again, June 6th at 8 a.m. And I imagine Trustee Hansen will be there.
So I think that the last meeting or a couple meetings ago, you talked about that the Stewardship Council was looking at the impacts of construction in the right-of-way. Is that
The
happening?
discussion has come up. The Stewardship Council as an entity is not looking at that.
Mm.
They are, as an entity, have taken the position that they aren't going to look at that. But it's individual, it keeps coming up individually, and it's going to come up, I think, on June 6th for sure.
And is Broomfield still in the? I think that they're opposing the breaching of the dam
Yeah,
concept.
they're doing a fine line between groundwater and air.
Right. So they think the groundwater is too contaminated to breach the dam, but it's okay to build something there because.
You can blow into the lake, but that's surface water, that's
Okay.
not groundwater. I guess.
Okay.
I don't know what their thinking is.
Seems to have some logically.
No, they're really
convoluted.
tap dancing on a fine line on that,
Okay.
for sure. Thornton, by the way, is coming out pretty strongly concerned about their water in this, in that issue, and the Jefferson Parkway.
And
Potential future ally there. And
Yeah.
I too applaud Golden for the I think great step they took. We'll see where it goes.
And Matt, were you trying to set up something with the CDPHE and their concerns at all? Or, I'm not sure, actually, I was racking my brain on how this was going to happen. I didn't remember what the,
With Carl's
So
Spring.
Carl Spring, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have anything yet, though.
okay.
That's all I have.
Trustee Henson?
As Trustee Sorelli mentioned, I attended the meeting this morning too. I was more there just to watch and listen and learn a little bit more.
Did you eat a bagel?
I ate a bagel and I had coffee too. Interesting. It is confusing. Gene from Thornton is going to send us a DVD on a 5-minute illustration of how it works. He said it's much better to watch than what we saw on YouTube. But it does look dangerous. But it's, I guess, just a change of habit. I'm working on a committee at Superior Elementary School with Mary Houseman, the principal, and by the way, she's retiring, and it's a big disappointment. She's such a good person. And the PTA, and we are procuring some new playground equipment for the kindergarten area and the first and second grade playgrounds. And we have planned a community build day, July 16th, Saturday, July 16th. We're doing the community build because we'll save money on the whole project by having the community come in and build it as opposed to the vendor. So July 16th. Dog park. I went to the dog park today with my dog and let him run around after they mowed it. So it's open. And it's great. And he just loved it. So he doesn't get to run around like that. And it sure is really nice. Last week I attended a ProStack meeting. The main topic of discussion was Town 9. And we were presented with 3 different themes. Theme 1 was a real minimal theme, not many amenities, just a bunch of open space, some amenities. Theme 2 was kind of in the middle, and Theme 3 had a bunch of amenities. And the group came to a consensus on Theme 2.5. So we took Theme 2 and we took off a couple things, but we added some items from Theme 3. And some of those items are a ropes course, full basketball course, a splash pad, perhaps a splash pad off-site over in the marketplace somewhere. Note,
What's a splash pad?
it's the ones I've seen is they have the streams of water that
Pop-up
shoot
sprinkler,
up and you
Kids
can run
run
through them
through
in the summertime.
or the courthouse in Boulder.
There's a suggestion of a signature teen item, such as one example was a skate park or something like that. And then a perimeter trail with some swings and a park course and climbing and rec. So that was agreed on by the group, and that's going to be presented to original town folks who attended the earlier meetings. And then we'll also start getting some costs for that. So the goal is to have this into staff, into the budgeting process in June, right?
Yep. And for board discussion at some point, hopefully, maybe in June, late June.
And then the last thing is just the alley. I drove down the alley behind Glass's house in the last rain. It was pretty muddy. And I'm just wondering, do we have a date set in the books for when that's going to be?
I forget what Kurt had told me. I thought it was, yeah.
First
I thought it was July, August time.
Okay. Okay, because it was pretty bad. I drove down just to see what it felt like in my car. And it was, I couldn't even drive in the middle.
We talked about
So
putting an inlet in there and then piping it across, so it would float. And then we have to fix another inlet on the north end of that alley as well. That was done originally a few years back as part of that street improvement program. So
So July, August is 10. Okay. Okay, that's it.
Anything from the town clerk?
Just a reminder that there's 3 weeks in between, 3 weeks in between the meetings.
Oh, okay.
It's not till June 13th is the next meeting.
Town manager?
let's see. As was mentioned, I think earlier, we have our dinner with the Open Space Advisory Committee on June 2nd. So if there's any specific topics that you would
June
like.
6th, right?
June 6th, sorry, yeah. That you would like to discuss at that, just let me know. We can put those on the agenda. I don't have anything right now. Did you say the Open Space Committee had something?
They're discussing
Okay.
what they want to put on, but nothing specific.
Okay.
They kind of want to make it informal.
Yeah, that's something with Will with these.
Rotary picture, yeah.
I want to thank Commissioner Heather Berry, Senior Commissioner, for letting us host one of our monthly meetings. That was good. We need a volunteer to hand out awards for the bike race, if anybody on the board is interested.
What time?
Sunday?
Yeah, you're, yeah.
I'm signed up
stay.
to do the volunteering on that day.
Oh, all right, okay. Because I thought you were out of town, but you'll
No,
be
Saturday.
here. Oh,
Sunday.
Saturday,
Sunday
right.
I'm
So
volunteering.
Sunday, yeah, we need a volunteer.
What time?
And what time would be that?
The awards ceremony, I think, is that evening, 5 or 6.
I could probably.
Okay. I'll let Martin know to give you a call.
I'll be your backup.
And then Kurt Kolar, our Public Works Director, informed me that the company that owns Southwest Water, which is the company that operates our water and wastewater treatment plants, which is J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, has decided that that is a business that they want to get out of. So
Who owns it?
Say that again?
J.P. Morgan Chase.
Yeah.
They own that company.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have notified us that they want to get out of that business. We're starting to work on options for the board to consider. That'll be the work session item for June 13th.
Are they spinning off the company, or?
Some principals with Southwest Water are kind of taking over those operations, so we'll have to have a separate agreement, just an interim basis until we figure out a long-term, whether we do an RFP to solicit other companies, as well as this new company that's kind of taking over our current operations. So we'll have a work session discussion with options for the board to consider for long-term solutions, and an interim agreement with this new company to continue operations of our plants.
So, but we have a contract that goes through the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay. So we're good till the end of the year.
Right, but with the transition, we want to just have an interim agreement with this new company.
Okay.
So that's coming up for the 13th. So it's kind of unexpected, but I think we have things under control.
Okay.
Let's see, and then as far as the digest, looks like we have possibly a couple new tenants, one at the marketplace and one at Colton Crossing. The one at the marketplace is a frozen yogurt business.
Tutti Frutti, huh?
Tutti Frutti.
Has to be good.
That'll be good.
Summer here.
And then a guitar store for Colton Crossing in one of the south buildings that's vacant currently. Sounds like they are going to be moving in there, so it's good news.
Yep.
We have our dinner scheduled with Louisville City Council on June 28th. If you have anything in addition to what I put in the digest that you'd like to discuss, I would imagine the interchange will be kind of the big discussion point there, but wanted to celebrate the book drop we were able to do, and then any other future areas of cooperation that we want to work together on. I don't know. They had that as one of the items they wanted to discuss. I don't know if they have something specific in mind or not.
What item do they have on their agenda?
Future cooperation and coordination.
How about what?
I don't know. We'll find out.
There we go.
One into our swimming pools.
As Trustee Hansen mentioned, the dog park is open. We kind of had a soft opening. It's with all the rain, the grass just took, and it seems to be doing well. So I was concerned about letting people on there and having that grass just get trampled and die, but I think we're going to be all right.
Soft-opening is a bad choice.
Is it
of
muddy?
words.
The bridge that got washed away, is that going to be replaced?
Yes.
Or it has been, okay.
And permanent bridge is scheduled for later this year with the urban drainage project, so that'll be good. And then it looks like the official opening ceremony for the park is June 18th. It sounds like it's June 18th.
Are we going to have a big shindig, or is
We
it?
should.
We will, yes.
Good.
Are we having anything for the new trailhead? Or the
Should be coming up on the 2nd, right?
that's
it's
just
on
with the county. Are
That's
we
the
doing
counties,
something?
yeah, June 2nd. And then we can, ProStack, I think, has been talking about doing one, but later in June, to give our park staff a little break from the bike race, which they've been working so hard on.
Yeah, there's a family event that they're
Yeah,
guided bike ride on Sunday.
right, yeah.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle, the chair of ProStack. Yeah, on that point, we wanted to do it earlier around the county's opening, but with the Morgul and staff tie-ups, it really didn't make any sense. And then we're told that the county won't let us, doesn't allow us to do any events
during theirs?
on the trailhead. So we're not sure whether we'll be doing anything formal on that. But I do encourage as many of you and as many in the town as possible to come out for the opening at 3 o'clock on the 2nd.
Right.
Because that's a very good show. It's good for the town to have a good turnout for that. So, thanks. It only takes about 20 minutes to.
Unless you're going to run it.
Okay.
And then just last, real quick, the bike race this coming weekend. So Parks staff and the chamber have been working hard to get this thing to its final stages. We'll have some message boards. Colorado State Patrol wanted us to put one right away on Highway 93, so we've done that. And then we'll have one at the Castle on Friday. And the second one on, I think, 93 or maybe 128. Just let people know that it's going to be happening this weekend. So,
How about more e-blasts to
Yeah,
the residents?
yeah,
Those are,
those are good.
How's how are registrations going? Do you know?
They are, we're doing better than we were last year. So,
Over 700?
well, we have quite a few. Last year we had quite a few same-day registrations as well. So, but as far as advanced registrations, we're doing better than we were last year.
And what volunteer jobs do you have available at the moment?
I don't know.
For residents.
I don't know. But if they're interested, they could contact Heather Crickraft with the chamber or Martin Toad with our Parks Department.
Or go on the website?
Or go on the website as well, yep.
I would suggest that actually be by itself a subject of one of the e-blasts.
Yeah.
If you're,
And we've
I understand you
done
still need
public.
quite a few more.
Yeah, you can throw my name on there,
Okay.
volunteer. Wherever you need me.
And we'll have a VIP tent, Land Rover, Starbucks in that area right there. It's gonna be a good event, I think. And it sounds like the weather's gonna be good. So.
That would be nice.
Hopefully.
I asked Martin. I said, "Do they race even in the rain?" Oh yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't matter,
Do.
rain or sun.
They don't show the movie in the rain.
Right. When it blows over or whenever it did last year. Anything from the town attorney?
Nothing, thanks.
Trustee Pennington? You
On the
don't have
road,
to talk about that.
right. So on the road construction project, obviously, when I don't think it's in dispute that there are at least certain residents who don't understand the nature of the project, and I do think it's a complicated enough project that probably that's a little bit far and wide in the community. I learned in being out there today with Matt and Kurt the connection between the concrete work and the road work. The road work's the most expensive element of this, and the concrete work, even the finest crack, tends to cause deterioration in the road work. So we've, I don't know, Kurt, you can tell me, I don't have an understanding of when we started this type of approach to roadwork projects. Hasn't always been where we did so much concrete work in conjunction with the road work. So I talked to Matt and Kurt about actually doing an e-blast to the community that explains what we're doing and why we're doing it, with contact numbers if residents are concerned. And so I wanted to make sure the board was in agreement with that.
Is there? I'm not sure how well we are with our electronic contacts. Is there a way to send? I mean, we could certainly send it to everybody, but could we send it out to the geographically affected areas? Are we that high tech right now?
No, not electronically, I don't believe. What we did prior to the project is we sent out letters to the affected neighborhoods, letting them know the project that was going to be occurring and project contact, and as well as Kurt's information as a contact. If they had questions or had concerns, they could contact one of those two. So we sent out 2 notifications to residents in those neighborhoods, but electronically,
Well, it seems like very reasonable to send something out just describing, people are not going to want to have a whole digest
Yeah.
about road construction, but,
I said
a couple
the shorter, the
sentences.
sweeter is what I
Yeah.
recommend.
Absolutely. It
Obvious-
just sort of brings me up, though, we should probably see what we can do about our electronic contacts, for water main breaks and things like that, so we don't actually have to send it to everybody, So, just as a
Yeah,
aside.
there are programs out there that will
And
manage.
I may be incorrect. We may have addresses associated with the emails, but I'd have to verify that.
Okay, that's fine.
But obviously, what is taking people by surprise, they're looking at the flat of the sidewalk and saying it has no issue. And Kurt did a good explanation today of showing how the gutter part of it actually is cracked, or there are other compromises to the structure. So I think a little more education is necessary on this. So, with the board's approval, I think you're prepared to do that, right, Kurt? But it does come to the bigger issue that I at least wanted to throw out there for a little bit of conversation is, as I told Kurt, I'm both a concerned resident and a concerned trustee on this particular issue because I think cracks are part and parcel of what concrete's about. I mean, we score them so they crack the way we want it, and then the seam between the asphalt and the crack. The seam between the asphalt and the gutter is just a natural conduit for water. So I wanted to throw out there, if anybody else has comments on this, about, this sort of, I don't know if it's a shift in our roadwork project or if it's a different tack on it or whatever, but I wanted to maybe have a few minutes worth of discussion on that aspect. Are we going a little, maybe are we trying to over-engineer this? So I don't know if we're prepared for that discussion, but I know that is some of the concern out there.
The discussion we had at the April 11th meeting was the approach with Public Works is if they find a crack, a small hairline crack, we're going to fix it regardless. So I guess my question still is that this hairline crack more important than a portion of concrete in another part of town that's really damaged? What's the really damaged concrete, what effect is that going to have on the asphalt in that area? The explanation that Kurt gave on the handicap ramps and the domes makes perfect sense, especially when we make any changes to the asphalt in front, we have to change it then, and that makes sense to me. But I'm still not convinced that we should be focusing on the hairline cracks at this point, that maybe we should be looking at some of the other parts of town that's much worse.
If I could just put my 2 cents in, the night we discussed this project was probably one of the more detailed discussions we've had on any project. I think it was well covered up. We've also had a street maintenance plan in place for now at least 2 years, maybe 3, that we're following. And that maintenance plan is based upon looking at the areas that need it the most and doing those as areas. I don't believe that it's fair to say that if you repair a crack here, you don't repair something more dangerous somewhere else at the same time, that the crack takes precedence. But the spot things that need repair are not part of your overall maintenance plan. Those are things you react to. So that's the way I see it. Kurt could correct me, but I think we're going about this in a systematic way. And if we're going to do that, I think we should stay with it. Otherwise, forget the systematic way and just go with whichever area makes the most noise.
Well, I'm going to chime in too. So I agree that we had a plan of when certain parts of town were going to be repaired, and we've been following that. However, I will say that when we did south of Colton, We pretty much did most of it, not all of it, but most of it one summer. Was that 2 summers ago?
It's last year, I think.
Okay, it seems like 2 years ago. At the time, there was no sidewalk repairs for cracks. So none of that was redone, just the repaving of the streets. And if there were a few maybe sidewalk repairs, and they were, much more damaged than just a crack. So, I mean, I have to say that area did not get it. Now, I went over to Kyoto Lane, on Kyoto and Alma Lane, and there's a lot being repaired that, I didn't see before. I see some of it before, but I see it after the fact, and it's a lot of concrete.
Well, keep in mind, we're talking about 6% of the total project when we're talking about concrete.
So that's 6%, all the sidewalks. Okay. So, so I guess one of the things that I said at that last meeting that we passed this was I was very apprehensive about passing it, but I was going to pass it this time. But in the future, I wanted to look at the level of quality control in relation to being cost effective. And are we going, above and beyond what we need or not need? Because we're going to get cracks. I mean, we live under bentonite, and we have underground streams in the area, and it's just a fact of life that you're going to get a crack probably, 5 minutes after you've poured the concrete. So I think that there's just a level of control that we need to look at, and I would like to look at that next year before we even pass anything. And not to say that, we're doing too good of a job or not good enough. It's just something I would like to see, that the quality control is, I think, important.
What do you mean by quality control?
Well, as to the level of quality that you want from this. Or do we want, perfect sidewalks with no cracks? I don't think we're going to get that. Do we want just major repairs on things that are broken or have heaved? I mean, I just want to see something that has more of a concrete, so to speak, concrete level of quality control that I can put my hands on and say, yes, that needs it. No, that doesn't. Something that I can go and look at, see on there, and then walk around and go,
I think you want to focus on I would suggest, the board wants to focus on
I agree with that.
Policy type.
And this is policy. This is policy on the level of quality control.
Because it sounds more like going out and okaying every crack.
No, I don't want to do that. I do not want to do
criticize.
that. No, I'm talking about a policy, a procedure that you can apply to the level of control, quality control. So,
I think maybe the word quality control is a bit confusing, Deb, because that usually comes after the fact, after you've put a project in. Has it met the quality standards you set out for the project? Whereas what this is more basically the level of tolerance of existing concrete, and whether or not a fine crack, a hairline crack in anything is worthy of jackhammering an amount out and then replacing it. I was not privy to that conversation, Joe. It's the only meeting I ever missed. Was the conversation on this. But when I read the minutes, there was no mention of the concrete situation. And in the minutes?
It's not in the minutes.
Yeah. And I haven't
It was part of the
had the time to
presentation.
go back and discuss,
So
watch the thing.
So if we're going to talk semantics, then I want to say that we should define what we consider our level of quality and put that in a policy and follow it.
Trustee Skumatz?
So I have to say that I agree with Trustee Cirelli, who I thought put it really, really well, and I think our overall policy to work by area and do it in a way that respects how those areas have been graded in terms of their quality or their condition. I mean, not their quality, their condition, and when each area needs to be addressed next. I think while they may seem like small cracks now, my guess is, and I'm happy to have Mr. Cower talk about it, my guess is that the judgment is made on, will this crack be too bad before we come back to this neighborhood? And that would be my guess on the kind of analysis that's done in determining whether or not to attack a particular crack or not. I'm happy to leave to staff the judgment of what cracks are going to cause some kind of structural problem now or in the future. And I think that the systematic approach is such a nice change from what was being done before that I just can't applaud it enough.
I will throw one more thing out there in defense of Trustee Williams and her comments, and what makes sense in going forward is I'll throw out my lay understanding of quality. So you have a quality assurance program. That's where you define the levels that you want to achieve and that level is defined by what the need is. You have, if you're building an airplane, the engine has to be the top level quality that you could possibly, right down to the bolts you're putting into it, and you go down from there based upon the risk. So that's your quality assurance program, and I think that's what Trustee Williams is asking for. And probably Mr. Cower could look at that and probably relay something like that to us. And then we can decide, are we going to have concrete that will never crack a little, get fixed once in a while. So that's something maybe reasonable to
Thank you. And
look forward to.
And I'm not looking to micromanage. I definitely don't. I don't want to
But
do
it
that.
sounds that way.
I know.
So
I understand that, but I think Trustee Cirelli put it perfectly there for me.
To wrap this up, I don't think that anybody's anticipating changing the contract for this year. We have pretty good price, and they're doing quality work as far as I can tell, and I don't think that I've heard from the board that we want to do that, but it'd be a good discussion when this contract comes back up next year for further discussion. Does that sound fair?
I thought, this is a good discussion for the 2012 budget process as well.
Okay. That brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. Welcome, George.
Well, I sleep there. None of us are cement contractors who know the strength of that concrete you're pouring in there, why it cracks and why it don't crack. Because here we're asking about cracks.
We all have opinions.
Two things that I have that's little to you and big to me. Number one is, for years I've been asking if you would do some improvements with the sound system here. Every one of you, and I don't care which one, I point, either got to lean up and speak into the mic, you feel uncomfortable, or you're either talking, looking at the town manager, or the town manager looking at you. I get paid federal government money for hearing. Please consider, we got new board members a year ago, please consider a lapel deal so I can hear you what you're talking about most of the time. Half the time I can't hear you, and I forgot my hearing aid tonight, so I'm lost again.
I like your
Consider
idea.
that, please.
We can do that,
Time and time and time again to have this happen, and if you sit back, you can relax, you don't have to be talking into a mic. You'll just come out like it does on TV. They look like they're perfectly content speaking right in the camera. So maybe I better get back in action after 20 years absence and bring my camera and tripod. I think I'll do that just for the fun of it.
Just look in the
Okay.
camera. That's right.
Secondly,
We can go forward.
I'm going to throw something at you at the board and see what your response is. It doesn't seem like we're getting this baseball field fixed. We had one taken away 5 years ago, and we promised one in the original town. And Mayor, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
We're not planning on putting one into Town 9. Everybody says it's too small. It bothers them. The lights, if we had lights, it would bother them. It ain't big enough. would you please take in consideration, we bought 10 acres over here, have given up 2 acres of it in the floodplain, floodway, for a ballpark, maybe 2 ballparks, and we could put lights up there future. We could have a nice place. Maybe we can get that off the ground over there if we have some activity starting over there on our own.
My hope is that we put a ball field on the Town 9, and I think there's probably enough room there. I think there's enough room on the Town 9
They keep
to put a
saying,
ball
well,
field
how
there.
come we don't have one after 5
Well, I know
years?
that ProStack is doing an analysis of that, and they're going to give us
I
a
mean-
report, so I think that was kind of where this was left. So I was assuming that might be happening sooner than later.
Well, I wish somebody'd tell somebody.
the
what to
western
do.
part of town,
I'm getting tired of
Yeah.
coming down here and they keep saying, we don't know, and we're not going to, and we're going to, and I'm just requesting that you dedicate some land over there that we can go ahead and it's in a floodplain, floodway, you can't build in it anyway. It would sure be nice for kids to have a place to play down here, and I have a bunch of them in this town. I really do.
I agree.
George, I think there is support amongst the board members to put on the western side of Town 9 to put a
Yeah, I think
baseball
Jim's gonna address
field.
that.
Mr. Payne is behind you, so he'll.
Well,
So
maybe
I think
ought
there's
to
at least
I think
even
there
for
is support.
T-ball and things like that.
Mr.
there's-
Payne to initiate this, because he initiated one over there pretty good, and we got pushed aside then, and I appreciate it.
I think
He's right behind you.
he's right behind. He's ready to
All
talk
right.
right now.
Ready
He's right
to-
there.
ready to chat.
He's right behind.
Turn
you.
around.
Well, that's what I wanted to do.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle, the ProStack Chair. Maybe I can just clear up where we are in the process. No decisions have been made at all. We've had community meetings, outreach meetings, where we've gotten input. We've hammered that into 3 different proposals. We've asked for a month now, we've been seeking and sending postcards to everybody in Sagamore and Original Town and all of our electronic media in the town, inviting feedback on preferences. And we now have some, let's call them general proposals based on the feedback that will go back to the residents in the neighborhoods again. And part of that is a baseball field. I will say that the only thing that ProStack, and we don't make this decision, but that ProStack is not in favor of is lights. We think that would run against the everything we're hearing from the preponderance of neighbors. But if you look at the diagrams, we do have in there proposals for an enhanced baseball field at the west end. It only shows in the diagram a little backstop, but if you read the proposals, there are 3 different levels of development of that field. And there's some economic issues here because of the wind and the ability to maintain dirt infield if we go that way, but that's a money issue. But all of these things are there, and it's for anybody in the neighborhoods or anyone in the town for that matter, but we're specifically reaching out to Sagamore and Original Town to give us their input on that point. But we do anticipate and are looking for feedback on exactly how much development of the field should be there. And it's in the process, so.
Very good. Because, I don't think anybody's looking for competition playing fields there on Town 9, but it's easy to put. I mean, I think there's some desire to have little kids being able to play baseball someplace, and I don't think anybody wants to have lights there. So, I mean, I guess I'm looking forward to having some, reasonable, not crazy improvements on the ball field. So, thanks. Additional public comment on consent agenda, non-agenda items? Seeing none, that brings to item number 6, presentations. And tonight, it's a great pleasure that we can go through the financial audit. And Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleased to introduce Wendy Swanhorse with Swanhorse and Company, who is here tonight to present the town's annual audited financial report for our 2010 fiscal year. I'm pleased to state that we received an unqualified opinion from the auditors, which sounds negative, but it's actually not. It's the highest recommendation that we can get from the auditors for a municipal government. So, Wendy, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Wendy Swanhorst, for those of you I haven't met. You have a couple documents. One is the actual CAFR. This is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And then this is the management letter, which is our communication to you. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at both of those. I'm not going to go over this document. This is actually prepared by your staff.
Joe really wants
And-
to.
And our responsibility for this is, as it's described in this letter, is that you guys hire us to tell you that we think these numbers are fairly stated in all the other respects. And as Matt mentioned, our opinion here is unqualified, meaning there are no qualifications, that you met all of the standards. So that was our job. The other thing we tell you in this letter is if we make a lot of adjustments to your books, or if we find any deficiencies in your internal controls that could cause those numbers to get misstated or cause errors, fraud, anything like that, anything we see while we're doing the audit, we're required to tell you about that in this letter. And we did not identify anything that rose to that level. So all good news. We had a couple just informational items in this letter that you probably saw. One has to do with the budget, and it's sort of a budget process. And if you want to look at this document on page 64, there's a budget for CERTA. And what your process does is that when you do a supplemental budget, you approve additional expenditures, but you don't necessarily approve additional resources, meaning revenues. And what happened in that budget is it caused that budget to look like you had budgeted to spend more than you had, which we know you didn't, but just from a documentation standpoint, that's the way it looks in that budget statement. So our recommendation is that when you're doing your supplemental budgets, that in addition to approving new expenditures, you also say, this is where we're going to get the money to spend. It's either new revenue or we had more in our beginning fund balance than we thought we were going to have. Sort of a documentation issue. So that's in here. And then the other thing I think you've maybe talked about in your budget process a little bit is a new accounting standard that all governments have to follow for 2011. It's known by us as GASB 54 because the Governmental Accounting Standards Board is the board that sets all the accounting standards for all governments. And this standard, what they said when they came out with this standard is they said governments use too many funds and they're hiding money over there. And we want to make governments consolidate these funds, into a reasonable way. And so what they said is there's too many special revenue funds out there. So if you don't have a specific revenue source, a tax or a fee or something like that, that they don't want additional funds. Now you guys have a conservation trust fund, you had your landscape fund, all of those things that have a specific revenue source. And so that's what those funds are for. And so I don't think you'll be changing any of your fund structure because of this, because I think you already had a good fund structure. The other thing it allows for the first time that we've never had before is in your fund balance section, general fund is where you're going to see this most of the time, is if you guys ever set aside money and committed it to use it for something, we were never able to report that in this audited financial statements. It wasn't part of the standards. It was not allowed. Well, now with this new standard, we will be allowed to do that. So if you're looking at your general fund balance, sometimes it'll come down and it'll have this big unrestricted number there. And if you guys commit to use that money for some specific project or anything like that, now that can be reported in these financial statements. So that was one good thing that came on it, I think.
I have a question about what you just said about the standard for funds and revenues, because maybe I'm misunderstanding. We have a capital fund but I don't think we have a specific capital revenue. Would we not be able to have that distinction in the future? Because we try to set aside the capital funds for capital purposes.
Really good question. That actually came up a lot when they were, talking about this standard. And I think a lot of governments said exactly what you did, is that governments want to be able to set money aside for capital projects, large capital projects. And so that part of the standard, allows you to still have those funds and set that aside, just transfer money over there and set that aside. As long as it's for capital projects or debt service, you can still do that. What we see once in a while in Colorado, not often, but sometimes in Colorado, they'll have contingency funds, and they'll just set this money aside in this fund that you can't see if you're looking at their general fund. And those are the kind of things that this standard is trying to get rid of. That you're just not setting money aside in all these funds with no purpose. So again, I don't really think it's going to affect the way you guys do it.
Other questions, trustees, comments?
It's not a question, just a comment that I'm glad that we get an unqualified letter again. Thanks so much, and it's kudos to our finance department yes, and glad to have nothing identified by you either as something that rose to a level that needed change, modification, et cetera. So really glad. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That really is a credit to your finance people. I mean, your audit is so smoothly, and it's the way they prepare, so.
I'm married to one CPA and have one in the making in my family,
I'm
so
When you go to ball games,
anyway,
Sure.
your statement in here, accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the town's internal control. Would you explain why your job isn't to do that?
Yes. I think I talked a little bit about in the beginning is that really our job is to tell you we think these numbers are fairly stated. Sometimes we rely on the internal controls you have in place, and a good example of that is any money that is expended from the town, you have internal controls in place to control that the expenditure is approved, that it's the right amount, that it goes to a valid vendor, all of those kinds of things you have in place. And that allows us as an auditor to sample those. And if we don't find any problems, then we can safely say and give you that unqualified opinion that says we think these expenditures are fairly stated. But we don't look at all of the internal controls. We don't test them to the point where we would say, yeah, absolutely, this internal control is always going to find anything that happens. We don't really go to that level. And if we did, and if you asked us to do that, I think you would see that your audit costs would be significantly more just because it would take a long time. And I don't necessarily think that, a town or a government sees the value of that. So this is a pretty typical engagement for us. Did that answer your question?
I had just one question about, I think it's page 78. Of course, now I can't. And in there it says that after the dissolution, the ad valorem mill levy up to 9.4 mils. Aren't we up to? I mean, we'll never go there, but aren't we at 12? Don't we have mill levy authority to 12?
I don't believe it was that high.
Well, if you could just check that one, because I think I might be thinking of things being combined together that you get up to that level, but that's not.
Mayor, Jeff Stone, town staff, you are correct. Our overall mill levy can go to 12.124. Every year we do a temporary reduction to get down to what our overall mill levy is for the town.
So the 9.4 here, that's referenced? I wasn't sure what that.
Page are you on, I'm sorry?
78, sorry. Is this there 78? Right, hang on. It's the year 51. Top paragraphs. In November 2003, page 51.
I think that's just talking about the dissolutions of districts 2 and 3, but I will double check that
Okay.
and get you an answer
Okay.
on exactly what that's for.
Okay, thanks. And my only other comment is that, thanks for doing the audit. Congratulations to town staff once again. Do a bang-up job, and we're completely appreciative of everybody's efforts along these lines. Leads me to say that budgeting cycle is coming up shortly, that we will be talking about all these issues in gory detail pretty soon. Have some, we'll go over all this, and so I've had some questions about debt, but it's probably not relevant to tonight's discussion, so we can talk about that during budget cycle. And do we have our meeting for town goals set up?
June 20th.
June 20th, okay. I wasn't sure that was on my.
I just want to make one quick comment. You guys do such a great job year after year after year. I've been here for 4 or 5 years now. I don't ever want you to feel like you're taking it for granted. We applaud you, and we're grateful for the work that you do. We almost expect we expect excellence from you. That's the bottom line, and you can deliver every year. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else about this? All right. Thank you once again. That brings us to something. Hang on. I have to navigate. One moment.
Maybe short consent agenda.
Yep, sorry.
The shortest
I just have to
Yeah,
get to
the
my...
consent, yeah,
This is
I'm,
the
electron-
shortest consent agenda we've
I'm
ever had.
electronically moving there for 1 second, sorry.
The bookmarks are kind of messed up a little.
Yeah, the bookmarks in this packet
Yeah, they're
didn't
really
work
bad.
quite as well.
really?
Yeah.
So,
And you can't find where the agenda is. You just
right,
have
I
to know
had
where
to,
it is.
had to, so.
Yeah.
That brings us to tonight's consent agenda, and on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 9th, 2011 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Planning Commission and Recycling Conservation Advisory Committee meetings, and that's it, so.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second, motion by trustee Gagura, second by trustee Williams. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. That brings us to item number 8, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Waterford Estates Homeowners Association regarding Waterford subdivision streets. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight before the board is consideration of a resolution which would approve an agreement with the Waterford HOA Homeowners Association regarding street ownership and improvements. The Waterford Homeowners Association in late 2010 requested from the town that the streets be made public and improvements to those streets be taken over by the town. This topic was discussed at a work session on November 8, 2010 by the town board, and then again on January 24, 2011 at a regular meeting. The streets currently are private. That occurred in 2001, and the gates were put back in place at that time. And as I mentioned, now we have a request from the HOA to take the streets back to public and take over the maintenance of the streets and concrete. From the January 24th meeting, the board asked that staff work with the HOA to see if we could come up with some type of an agreement that worked both well for the town as well as for the HOA. I think we have gotten an agreement that is gets us to that point from based on our direction that we had. Rita Dozell, who's the president of the HOA, is here to entertain any questions from the board. I was just going to highlight some of the points from the agreement real quick. So the agreement that is before the board tonight would have the HOA convey Tract H, which is basically the streets within the subdivision, to the town for public use. The HOA would provide a quick claim deed, which would provide free and clear any liens or encumbrances for Tract H. It provides the town has until September 30th, 2011 to determine if any initial repairs will be needed prior to taking those streets over, and allows us to bring those up to any minimum standards that might be needed. It provides with the quick claim deed that the HOA will have no ability to restrict access to the streets. Provides the town the power to determine the necessary maintenance for the streets, including street sweeping and snow plowing. It will require the HOA to take down the gates if necessary. We don't plan on that being necessary, but if we need to have the gates taken out to get equipment into and out of the subdivision, this would require the HOA to remove those gates. Requires the HOA to maintain the gate structures and any associated structures. They have a mailbox area and stuff, so the HOA would maintain those still. And then it provides that if there's any breach by the HOA, the town, at its discretion, can provide written notice to the HOA and if we decide quitclaim the deed, the streets back to the HOA to make it private again. Let's see, budget implications. We have provided some estimates in there. What we'll need to do if the agreement is approved by the board is get in there, do some soil sampling to determine really what type of repairs we need to do in the future, and then plug those into future budget years into our pavement management program like we would any other subdivision. And then we provided some attachments, including the minutes from the 24th meeting and the Waterford subdivision final plat, the resolution.
Trustee Gregorius and then Trustee.
So I have a small question and a big question. I'll start with the small one. I don't quite understand the 10-second delay at the gates.
Uh-huh.
Why would there be any delay? I don't quite see what. How did you arrive at 10 seconds?
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
at the meeting on January 24th, it was my understanding from that meeting that a delay was kind of a compromise between the gates coming down and we taking over the roads, or the gates staying up and the streets remaining private. So for the gates to remain up and still have public access for the public roads, that's where we came up with the delay. And
I mean,
do you have that? Go ahead.
I guess I don't understand the mentality behind the 10 seconds. Why can't car pulls up, gates open? Just like if.
There'd be no reason to.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Before we have a
So that's one
Yeah,
back
question.
and forth, yes, just 1 second.
Okay, so that's one question.
Okay.
So I'm sure it might be answered. The second question is, I see, typically when there's an agreement, you kind of see a win-win, right? I can totally see the win from the HOA's perspective. What is the win from the town's perspective? I see potentially $500,000, right? I'm just asking, I'm not.
Our recommendation, staff's recommendation when we first had the discussion was, if the town wants to take the streets over, the gates should come down. That was our position at the meeting. The HOA, of course, wants to maintain the gates. And I took from that meeting on the 24th that we could maybe come up with a compromise to where they could leave the gates up, there'd be some delayed opening of the gates, and the street.
I guess I'm baffled by it. I don't quite understand it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry?
if I could, I know that Trustee Skumatz, I don't want to interrupt anybody. I guess my only thought about that is that, there's no upside for the town, really. There's just negative financial consequences.
That's what I'm saying.
But I guess what it boils down to is providing service to residents, which is what the town of Superior does, and they're some of our residents. So that's how I look at it.
Okay, then what about the gates then?
That's up for the board to hash out. Trustee Skumatz.
So
I don't understand.
while I wasn't in favor of leaving the gates up, and while the rest of the board seems to be in agreement about that as a compromise, 10 seconds is much too long, in my opinion. So that's waiting a long time. So that was one of the comments I had. Another thing I think would be a good thing to do is to put a sign up that says, "This is a public road." Otherwise, it looks just like the same old gated thing that it's always been and exclusive, and I don't think that's what, if we're paying for the roads, I don't think that's appropriate. I think it should say it's a public road and that people get access to it. I think one of the things I mentioned that I didn't see in this document, if we're going to go ahead and do this agreement, again, not my preference, but if we do, I asked for wording in the document explaining sort of the past and that it was not something that we expected to see revert back. If we're paying for the roads, it stays our property, and it's not something that we just willy-nilly revert back again. I didn't see that kind of thing in here.
Well,
maybe I misread it, but I wanted to explain the reason why and the fact that this is something we expect to retain for good. I'm very concerned with what you just said about, gee, if their HOA doesn't do things right, then we revert back. No,
But it's
that's the whole. They could just do that, and then we've paid, and And they
No,
get
no,
locked
that's
in.
at our discretion.
That's right,
We
yeah.
want to give ourselves an out if the HOA breaches the agreement. In other words, if the gates aren't well maintained suddenly, or some other obligation that the HOA has under the agreement, it would enable us, at the board's discretion, to give it back. There's nothing that would state that we'd have to give it back.
Right.
And my concern is just that we have this history of not remembering what happened several years ago. And, I remember when this reverted the other way, and it became private after we fixed the roads, exactly as we saw in letters, and I thought we discussed it at the last meeting. The majority of the board didn't seem convinced by that, but I think we should have something in there that says, this is as public a road as any other road. It happens to have a gate over it, but we should have a sign or something that makes it very clear this is Town of Superior. I don't recall in here, maybe it's because I skimmed it too fast or something. Who handles snow plowing in the future?
We would.
The town.
We would.
But
Well,
those
we
are
don't now.
But those would be similar to any other
I know.
of the third-tier streets,
I'm just-
where only in catastrophic events would we even
Okay, it's
go
cul-de-sac.
in there.
That's
We're
right. If
just
you go to
taking that on
section-
as well, that's all I'm saying.
If you go to section 3A, that's where we say we determine what is necessary. So.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I could have swore from the January 24th meeting that was the direction for us to go as far as this.
It was the majority.
Okay.
It was, I'm not,
The 10-second one, you meant?
no, we didn't list the time.
Well, we
not.
did. We had
We did.
discussion
Yeah.
about the actually longer time.
Yes, we
Upwards of
did.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
The
Right,
compromise
yeah.
suggested was, well, how about 15 seconds?
Right.
No, I don't
Yeah,
remember
it's in the
15.
minutes.
But anyway, it seems too long to me.
Well,
And I think a sign would be appropriate, saying it's a public road, if we go this way.
Trustee Cervelli.
Since I believe I'm on record as supporting this concept, and I'm in support of this agreement, I'll explain my view of why I support it. Number one, I think the history is significant here. These are our neighbors, and we go back through a confusing time, and it was public and private, and so I'm empathetic with that, and I don't think there's anything similar to that in town. That's number one. So I think it would be right to make them public again. I supported the compromise with the gate opening, and I don't think 10 seconds is particularly long. I think it's, anybody going in there will know if they have business in there, and if they don't. And why I support that happening is because there is, I was convinced there's a certain value to those homeowners to have the gate, and I don't think we should just take it away on the concept that, okay, it's public, we all need to be able to drive through there. Well, we all are able to drive through there, and it just has allows them to say they're a gated community, I believe, and I think that's of value to them. And for 10 seconds, I didn't see any great need to take that away.
So historically, Joe, when those homes were they built with the intention of it being a gated community?
Yeah, so I'll
Like what?
give you a little history.
Yeah, let's do the history.
Those were one of the first homes in Rock
Right.
Creek, and they were part of the parade of homes at that time. And in the Rock Creek Ranch planned unit development, they are listed as private streets. Richmond Homes in '94, I think,
Yeah, I think that was.
conveyed those to District 2, and at that time they were public. Then in 2001, District 2.
And I think just to be clear, so the Richmond Homes, which was the developer,
Right.
I suspect was also the HOA at the same time, because there probably weren't enough homes built.
Right.
So just like those of us who moved into Rock Creek initially, Richmond ran the HOA because they had more plots than anybody else. Then conveyed it to District Number 2, which was Richmond Homes. So this was all an intercompany shuffle as far as I could tell.
Yes, that's correct.
So.
And then,
No, go ahead.
so then in 2001, those streets were conveyed back to the HOA. And at that time, the gates were reinstalled and they became private once again. So you see the back and forth, they went private, public, private.
Why then do
Trustee
we
Skomas,
say
I'm
somewhere
sorry.
in here, excuse me, somewhere in here we did say they've always been private, whereas the streets have always been private. That confused me, given.
Because they really didn't ever become public. If you look back at my memo, they never became public because they were never accepted by the town. In
By
order
the
to
town.
become a public street, they had to be accepted by the town of Superior.
That's right.
And they were never accepted by the town. So they were private the whole time.
So this is the first time, if this gets passed, this will be the first time will they become public?
Yes, this would be the first time they would become public. There was some confusion because District 2 had them for a while. That did not make them public.
Right.
That does not make them public. Because because they're in the jurisdiction of the town, the only thing that can make them a public street is for the town to accept them.
Excuse me, this is Rita Dozelson, 45 East Wiggins, but District 2 did maintain the streets at that time.
Correct, but they're not a public
They're not
entity.
public.
They're not
Okay,
public.
all right.
Okay, that's the confusion then.
Yeah, that's
really
Trustee
confusing.
Skomas.
So, and it's not that, I just think we should be equitable.
Promise.
And so my concern is also about a slippery slope. And I believe I mentioned this last time. Why then can't my neighborhood put up a set of gates? Or your neighborhood put up a set of gates? And I don't think that's what we're after. And it concerns me to have one public set of streets that's gated. So that's just my comment. It doesn't require a response.
Well, this would be
It only is a
an
comment.
outstanding time to see if there's a representative of the Waterford Homeowners Association.
I'm not out to get any neighborhood, I'm just trying to I'm concerned about them. It seems like, as I think you were implying, we want it both, somebody wants it both ways.
Rita Dozelson, 45 East Wiggins. I can't answer the question about the other locations having a gate, but I believe the town attorney said last time and at the last meeting that it would have to be brought before the town, and the board and the town could make a decision whether or not they wanted to accept that. You know, so it isn't that just because there was a gate, then there wasn't a gate, and now there is a gate again at Waterford, doesn't automatically imply that the town has to or doesn't have to accept a gate in another community. And then, we've been through this a lot of times, and I appreciate your patience, everybody, for doing this. And but we did have the gate, and as Mayor said, the gate was there originally. Everybody bought their houses with the expectation, and also the documentation that there was a gate, will be a gate, and now is a gate. So, and we had many discussions, as you were saying, about 30 seconds or 15 seconds or 10 seconds, and that's what we decided to. I don't think the amount of seconds is so much of a determining factor here, but if we had it where you just approached it and it automatically opened, then there's no reason to have the gate there. So, there would be no reason to have the gate there. And to put up a sign that said public street to go through there, there's no through there. That
I
was
didn't
the
say
problem
no
in the past, was that putting up a fact that it's public. We already had such a problem with so many cars try to go through there because that's the first entrance into Rock Creek. I mean, that's what people see when they come into Rock Creek Parkway. They see that entrance. And District 2, back in 1999 and 2000, actually sat out there on the end of my cul-de-sac and did studies, and there were like 50 cars an hour that would come through there, turn around, come back on a Sunday afternoon. And they wouldn't just drive slowly out of there, they would scream out of there because they think it's a through street. So, and there's signs up there all over that says not a through street. It doesn't say not a public street, it doesn't say a private street, it just says not a through street. So putting up a sign that says public street and then having a gate there and another sign that says not a through street, I'm not sure what we're actually accomplishing. But I think that we'd all come to the agreement that let's put them back to public, because as far as most of us were concerned, they were public when we went back to District 2. It says it right in there, that Tract H, which is the street itself. And when we had to take the street back, many of us thought that meant that we had to take the maintenance of the surface of the street and plowing the street and all that kind of stuff, which we did do. And then now, now we'd like to go back to where we thought it was, which was a public street, which was documented, and the CCRs were amended, and everything through the county. So anyway, that's where we're back to. I'm willing to discuss whatever we need to discuss further, but I think we've had this discussion many times, and I hope that we can come to a final resolution. And again, I appreciate all the patience, because I know this has been a long process for all of us. And I have to say that the town staff has been very businesslike on it this time, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board comments or questions? Trustee Williams?
So, is there anything in here that allows the HOA to take back the streets for private?
No,
That can't happen.
It's
not
deeded to
unless
us.
we determine that it should happen.
So it's only on the towns, and
Exactly.
can it be, okay.
Do they have to take it? If we determine we don't want
Yes.
it, do they have to take it?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
They've agreed to in
That's
this
the
agreement.
corollary to your question.
So as a, one other remedy would be that, as opposed to just giving it back to the HOA, is that if they're a default that the gate comes down, is that something that could be drafted?
If that's what the board wants, certainly.
I mean, I'm not anticipating any defaults here, but, that would be the, what would be the worst possible scenario? The town spends $1 million on street rehab, they default on it, and they say, well, we want it back now, so that would, we would be out $1 million, I'm just throwing random numbers around. That's not the dollar figure associated here, but maybe the stronger position would be you default on it and you don't get your gate, so.
Again, in order to go back to them, you would have to approve it. But certainly, we could put something in there that the gates have to come down in the event of a default.
And then it's clearly a public street. I mean, once again, I'm not anticipating anybody defaulting on this, because I think we're all going in with good faith about what we want to do here. Trustee Pennington?
So the part, should the HOA breach any of its obligations? To me, the obvious breach would be that they don't keep it at a 10-second lag. They instead supply all of their residents this number and lock it back up or something like that, because they must maintain it to get through themselves, et cetera. So I'm missing, to me, that would be sort of the breach that killed the deal.
It could be a breach, yes.
Yeah. What else was anticipated? What am I potentially
They
missing
failed to
here?
maintain the structures,
Insurance.
insurance. There's
And
a
not
number.
maintaining insurance.
There's a number of things that they need to do.
Okay.
Now, just a point, I don't know if this will have any bearing or not, but we have talked with, and Rock Creek Master Homeowners Association had made an offer to us to include the Waterford Gate and the surrounding kiosk as part of the overall Rock Creek Homeowners Association. So therefore, then we could do away with Waterford as a separate standalone homeowners association. The only reason we had it anyway was for the gate and the kiosk, the mailbox kiosk, and that little bench there for a bus that never stops. But so that's like I said, the only reason there's a Waterford anyway was it was created by Richmond American Homes, the developer, to have a gated community so they could advertise and promote and sell Rock Creek and this area. So and frankly, it seems overkill to have Waterford as a separate.
So wait a minute.
Can I ask?
Well, back up.
So, let's see.
Okay.
Who wants to start?
I didn't hear the last words.
Trustee Williams.
There was a referral. What were the last words?
It just, to have a separate separate homeowners association just for having a mailbox kiosk and a gate doesn't seem like it's necessary to have a full-blown homeowners association and maintain
So our
all
question would be the same.
Trustee Williams.
I'm talking about the
Trustee
HOA.
Yeah,
Yes.
Waterford HOA.
So you want to dissolve the Waterford HOA.
I don't want to do anything. I said I've been approached by Rock Creek that they would
Oh.
entertain the potential of assuming responsibility for that.
Then
That would
would
be
your
easy.
dues be any different to pay for the gate and the kiosk and all that?
We would have to provide the capital fund that we already currently have. We have a capital fund that we've created to have to maintain the gate, and we'd have to present that and provide it over to them. Actually put a capital account in there to fund that. Nobody else would have to fund that. That would only be, but we wouldn't have to have a separate homeowners association for that.
Right, so what if that capital amount is depleted because you needed to
Then it would,
use it?
I'm sure, we haven't talked about it, but I would expect that they'd have to do a special assessment to just
Yeah.
us, which they can do. Yeah, they can do a special assessment.
So that complicates passing this
It does.
agreement,
Yes.
because if we're going to have an agreement with the Waterford HOA that will not exist next month, we might as well have one with Rock Creek HOA.
It wouldn't happen that quickly, and anyway, it also says in there, I think, that if transfers over, to anybody else. And if it doesn't, then I'll just stop. I haven't done any discussion with them. I just had that.
It says in here that it cannot be signed without written consent of the town. I guess I would, we'll see what the board wants to do. But
Yeah.
we would have to come back again and get consent if they wanted to assign their obligations, dissolve this HOA, and assign their obligations to the Rock Creek HOA. We would have to come back to you again.
Okay. Well, if that's going to be complication, we don't do it. It was suggested at the last working session that we might.
No, I just want to know how we would proceed. Thank you for
okay.
clarifying that.
Trustees comments?
Mine is, how can we have an agreement with an entity that won't exist?
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay. Any other board comments or questions about this? Any additional public comment about this particular issue? So I guess I am where Trustee Sorelli is. I mean, we would never do this now. The history is so convoluted, where the developer essentially, was running all three of the entities that, the HOA, the Metropolitan District, and their own company, basically advertising in a way that it's a gated community, and to the people buying there that the streets are public because they're in Metropolitan District Number 2. Technically, that's not accurate. I mean, that was within the boundaries of Metropolitan District Number 2, but Richmond ran Metropolitan District Number 2 at that time. So it pains me to recommend this, although I'm going to recommend that we pass this, because we wouldn't, ever do this for anything moving forward. But then again, they are our residents. I think that given the history, that it's a reasonable accommodation to somehow fix all these, issues that have been in the past. So, I mean, it's a completely logically valid argument to say, yeah, there's a gate there, it's not public, boom, done. I mean, I get that argument. But in this one particular case, which I think is completely exceptional and would never occur again within the town, I think it's a reasonable agreement.
So I'm just going
Trustee Williams.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say that the only way I will consider passing this is if it's cut and dry and not convoluted, and it doesn't have the chance of being reverted back. Because then another board is going to have the same difficulty in going through all the different history, trying to figure out what happened, how it all happened, and then the Waterford HOA is going to come back and say, we're now private again, we want to be public, and here's what happened, and what do we do? So I want to eliminate that possibility. So I like what the mayor had to say about the penalty being the gates come down, instead of the penalty being that it reverts back to private streets.
The way the agreement's drafted currently is the town has sole discretion in any future action.
I understand
Whether breach
that.
or not.
I
Whether
totally
there's
get
a
that.
breach or not.
But it'll be a different board
Correct.
in 5 years from now, and There's an awful lot of history, and
Just so you know, there's always a legal ability for any board to make a public street private by vacation proceedings. So, while I understand what you're talking about in this agreement, just be aware that any future board could vacate this street back to private ownership anyway. So, I just want you to be aware that there's another procedure to do that, even if we try to protect against that in this agreement.
And why would a future board do that?
I don't know.
It's made up
They
of
don't have
Waterford
history.
residents. I mean, it could be anything.
yeah.
Well, I don't think they want it back. You don't want it back.
We never thought we had it in the
Yeah,
first
right.
place.
Don't want it. Right.
For
So
whatever reason.
I just want to protect that a little bit more, and I get your point legally, but why make it really easy?
The compelling argument for this is the fact this has been such a murk and muddle over the years, and to clarify it once and for all. And given that, I have to say I choked on this little bullet point here on that same thing, Deborah, and I choked on it again when I read it. It bothers me about this reversion. I do like the clarity that should there be any HOA breach of any of the obligations with X number of days' notice, if it's not remedied, the town has the ability to remove the gates. I think that's nice and clear.
We had that.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable.
The HOA.
Okay, makes sense.
Trustees comments?
And I'm not clear what the obligations are in real, they seem kind of trivial obligations in the first place, so I'm not sure where the give is here, as Trustee Gregoris started out the discussion. It rankles me to have this come back and say, oh gosh, now we need major repairs, we need you to pay for it. That's the way it strikes me, and that's a problem for me. I think if it's a gate, then I'd like it to be clear to our residents who are paying this bill that they're public streets. And a sign would help me, saying it's a public road. Doesn't have to say it's a through road, but saying it's a public road, or making it really clear to our residents that it is a public road, they've helped pay for these repairs, or they've frankly paid for these repairs, given the few number of homes. I just would like things to be fair.
Other board comment?
I disagree with that. I think that it is fair. These residents bought that house. I could have bought a house there if I wanted to, or if I could afford it. But I don't think there's any reason to put a sign up that says that this is a public road. I mean, why would anyone want to drive through there? There's no reason for them to drive through there, unless they have friends there. So I'd say just leave it like it is, and let's not make this too difficult. Just move on.
I think one choice would be to have a small little thing there that, says X number of seconds delay, wouldn't have to be posted as a sign, but I don't know, I think there's like an intercom there or something, isn't there? Something like that. Just so it's clear that people could get through, that the efficacy of the gate is still in place because you're not going to drive into a place that has a gate, so.
I mean, most people wouldn't drive,
Exactly.
So, I think most people wouldn't drive. Why would they approach a gate that's closed if they don't have access? If they don't think they have access to the code to get in, why would they do it?
You
That's
can't
what I'm
believe
saying
how
is
many
wrong.
people drive up to that gate, and actually, it's been run into, actually, because people expect it to open immediately. And then they get mad, and then what they do is try to go in through the out gate if someone's coming out. And there's been several times when there's, been close to accidents because they just drive up there, and like I said, the bottom of the gate's even been
But what do
run
they
into.
do there then? What's the point of
Well,
coming?
they are trying to get through the rest of Rock Creek. Most of the time, the people that are angry about the gate not opening are not the ones that are coming there to visit with someone. Because the people that come to the visit automatically go to the keypad. And they've either given the code that they can punch in and it'll open immediately.
Or they call.
Or they call
Right.
the person that lives there, and then we just punch 9 on our phone and it opens the gate. So people who know come there. The ones that don't know and that are really the ones that are upset are the ones that are trying to get to the rest of Rock Creek, and they think they can go through there. And so that was always the issue from the beginning. Well, the beginning was, like I said, the gate was there. Then Richmond, they put it up, then they took it down. then they said they would put it up again after some of the houses were built because the construction people were breaking the gate down. And it was very expensive to repair and to put it up. So then when we went back and asked, can we put it up now, we asked Richmond, and then we had to go to Superior Metro District 2. And so without it, you cannot believe how many people, when we have the gate open. The gate's open a lot. I mean, I know Trustee Sorrell runs through there all the time. I see him. I see a lot of other people come through there. And the gate's open quite a bit because we want it to have, we leave it open every day from certain hours. And then there are other times when I'll open it. And I can open from anywhere. I can open it right now by calling it from my phone. I can,
Such power.
I can, such power. All right. But I can call it and tell it to stand open, and so we do that whenever anybody asks, and and even if they're going to use that little grassy area right to the left when you come in, which is actually was part of 2 lots that were part of Waterford as a subdivision. But then they were deeded over like 4 or 5 years ago to public open space. But anyway, so, whatever we need to do, we'll do. But I think that for me, and having lived there since 1994, January 1994, when it was deeded back to public, what we thought of as public to Metro District 2, was that people that aren't supposed to be there are the only ones that come up there and get angry about the gate being closed. I rarely, and actually, I walk a lot too, and every time I'll go by, if someone's there, if I'm walking by, I go up and punch the code and open the gates. I don't ask them, why are you here? Who are you here to see? If they're there by the keypad, then I'll open the gates. Or if I'm leaving, going to work, or going somewhere and I see someone trying to get in, I open the gate. Because I can open it from my car too. And so that's what we try to do. We're trying to make it accessible to whoever wants to be in there and needs to be there, but not for all the people that have no business being there.
One more. Okay, go ahead. On item 2C of the agreement, it says the town's initial repair work shall be completed by September 30th, 2011, or this agreement shall be null and void. But in the opening remarks, it says that we've made an assessment and that there's no need to do any repairs for the remainder of this year.
Yeah. I'll ask Kurt Kohler to come up. He went out and did his, when we did the November meeting and the January meeting, we gave some estimates, and then he and I went out and took a look again, and after taking a look at the streets and the concrete work there, our determination that they currently meet our town minimum standards, and we could just build in future improvements to those roads and sidewalks into our capital improvement paving program from here on out.
But not as first priority.
Right.
And not in 2011.
No.
So then 2C should probably be removed.
Yeah, I don't see any. Basically, I don't want to have the town be told when certain things need to be done, and so unless this is a deal killer, we just eliminate it, I think.
I see.
I didn't write that agreement. So when I asked that same question, it seems like we're contradicting ourselves.
So when we were drafting this agreement, we wanted to make sure we had enough time. If this was being drafted as we were doing other things before we went out and took a look, Kurt and I, so we added that language in there to make sure if we felt like there was initial improvements that we needed to do, we had time to do them. And then after the agreement was drafted, we went out and took a look.
So is it necessary to keep it now?
No, it's not.
Okay, can we eliminate that? Yeah. Okay, I'm ready to move forward.
Let's see, Justice Gomez.
Sorry. So I guess my other comment is just the comment about people who have a need or have a need to be there. I don't, maybe the people on Andrews Street think that you shouldn't be on Andrews Street, using up doing the wear and tear. The point is that if the town takes it over, it's a public street, and anybody has the right and reason to be there. And so to me that comment concerns me, and the fact that, and I can't support it unless it requests a sign that makes it clear it's a public road.
Other board comments? Well, I'll entertain any direction anybody would like to.
I would like to make a motion to move to adopt Town of Superior Resolution Number R-26, Series 2011, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement between the Town of Superior and the Waterford Estates Homeowners Association, Inc.
And does that include the gate removal language?
Yeah, there's a couple
For the
of
breach and elimination of the.
The elimination of
2C.
2C and the modified language
All right,
for...
well, I need a little bit, if this is what we're going to be voting on, I need a little bit more guidance. Do you want to maintain the
10
right to give it
seconds.
back? Well, first, let me just go to the breach. Do you want to maintain the right to give it back as one possible remedy and then another possible remedy to take down the gates? I hear conflicting.
Take down the gates.
Take down the gates.
All right.
Just take down the gates only.
Take that, yes.
And I don't want to vote on something unless the attorney can draft language that would make sense tonight.
I just so you know, this is against my recommendation. I would recommend that you leave the language in that allows you to give it back if you need to. But I just want that to be clear.
Well, then, if you think it's important, then I would leave it in there. It increases the flexibility, I guess, that we would have. I
It
can't
does.
imagine ever doing
Can
that.
you have
but-
both? Removing
Yes,
the
I
gates
was
and
going.
then- okay.
Yeah, my first thought was that we put both in, so it
Okay.
gives you the option to take either remedy if you want to.
But it also allows a future board to give
Yes.
it back, which
Right.
is maybe what you do
A
with
problem.
one.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, that's where.
So yes, the answer is both.
That's in your motion. The answer, okay, so in your motion, you want to do the two options for the breach.
Right,
Which you
correct.
want her to read to us.
And 2C.
Which you will read to us.
Okay, so now, first of all, subsection 2C has been deleted in its entirety. And then the other change is subsection 7, or section 7.
Right.
Is now split. There's an A, and a subsection A and a subsection B. Subsection A now says, in addition to any other legally available remedy, should the HOA breach any of its obligations under this agreement and fail to cure such breach within 30 days of written notice by the town shall have the right but not the obligation to convey Tract H back to the HOA by a quitclaim deed and thereby make the streets private again. And the HOA hereby agrees to accept such quitclaim deed and accept full responsibility for and ownership of the streets in Tract H. Subsection B, which is new, says, in addition to any other legally available remedy, should the HOA breach any of its obligations under this agreement and fail to cure such breach within 30 days of written notice by the town shall have the right but not the obligation to enter upon the HOA's property to remove the gates at the HOA's sole cost. By this subsection, the HOA expressly grants permission to the town to enter the property and remove the gates and all related structures and facilities. The HOA shall remit payment to the town for the entire cost of such removal within 30 days of receipt of an invoice from the town.
That's exactly the red.
Well said. That's of course. And did you also have in there would be at least a sign at staff's discretion that would say that gates will open within 10 seconds?
I'm not really in favor of that. With any sign.
Makes it, the sign I'm thinking of is about that big, and it's by the,
Where would it be, though?
it'd be right by
Kiosk
by the
pad,
kiosk.
by the little pad,
Yeah.
you know, not the little, it's like 24 inches by 18 inches probably. It's on the monument, you know,
Okay.
the
The middle
granite
part?
monument.
Yeah, I'm
there.
not thinking a green highway sign there.
No, it's like a no solicitor sign, except
Yeah.
this way is, you know, gate will open in 10 seconds or something like
Neon.
that. You know,
Flashing neon.
we get, you know, which probably
overhead that
helps
goes
to
flying into the-
Yes, that was my thinking.
Okay.
That's almost like saying the key is in the backyard.
But again, I think the people that, the gate is not a security gate.
Right.
It's
People will
not
raise it.
a security gate. You know, it's not to keep people out that, you know, maybe going into the rob or like to need a key to access it. It really is just to cut down on the traffic that people don't realize where they're going within the rest of Rock Creek, and they think that's the way to get to Rock
We have
Creek.
to reread the
That's
resolution.
something that I think the
Yeah.
town can install as a public.
That would be one of the things, though, that would be a breach, so I think it might make sense that that's actually in the language.
To put up the sign?
Yeah, once again, the
Very
sign
small
I'm thinking
sign.
of is
Small
like
sign.
But I
this.
think we should say that, a small sign by the
Yeah,
keypad.
The keypad.
Right? Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
that towns, I mean, I don't think I want to write that, of what the sign, the dimensions, what it's made
No,
out
no,
of.
No, no,
So
no,
that's why I
just
just
say
want to
at
make
the
sure it's at,
keypad.
by the
At
keypad,
gate,
at the
at
town
keypad
manager's
entrance.
discretion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the sign would say gate 10 seconds
10 second
delay.
delay or whatever.
And if they can figure that out and they want to wait 10 seconds, perfect. They
Yeah.
just go approach it and then it'll open.
Okay, that sounds fair. Okay.
By that time,
Do we have to reread the resolution, or we got it?
Yeah, I got a draft this one.
So the gate will open both ways, right?
No, you can't, once you get in, you can't get out, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you pull up to it and wait for the time delay, then it opens towards you.
Whack.
Evil Empire gate.
Did anybody second this, or no? Or we're still waiting?
We're waiting to see what your
Sorry.
motion actually looks like.
No, it's okay.
I got to see what you said.
This is the longest delay between reading a resolution and getting a second.
Okay, so now I've added a new subsection F to section 4 that says the HOA shall install a sign at the keypad at the gates stating that the gates open on a 10-second delay. The form, size, and content of such sign shall be subject to approval of the town manager in his or her reasonable discretion.
That sounds fair.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, exactly.
We're really sharing the same wavelength, aren't we?
All right, does anybody want the second?
So we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Trustee
Trustee.
Hanson. Further discussion? All in favor?
Oh,
Now, are we
spending
spending money or potentially spending money on this? Is this,
I
yes?
guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you're not spending any money by this agreement.
by this agreement. I don't care.
No, we'll put the sign up. I mean, that's no big
So,
deal. Make
okay.
it a sign.
All in favor? So Hanson, Sorelli, Muckle, Gregouris, Pennington opposes, Skumatz, and Williams. That motion carries. So,
And we all know why I voted no, right?
yeah, I mean, once again,
No,
as,
this is
Because
very
it's
unique.
too convoluted for me.
yes. I just
No,
want
birding
to thank
backwards.
Rita, town staff, the town board for dealing with this. It's been a very long and drawn out, and I think that this is a reasonable accommodation to everybody, and I understand why people would vote against it. I mean, once again, it's like you say, very convoluted, so. Let's see. I don't have to get back to the agenda. I think that we're done now, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. And it just as a,
And you're 2 minutes late.
yeah, if we could, somehow the
Get the
bookmarks are not working the best for me tonight, so.
Yeah.
Anything else to come before the board this evening? Seeing none?
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Can we get lapels? Can we put that right
I thought
here?
we just fixed these this year.
We did, we did.
let's,
But he's got a point. He really has a great point.
is there a?
Can I
could
just take
somebody-
it off and go like this?
Do we
Can I
listen to
have, just, would it be okay to have just staff direction that, once again, not adding a whole bunch of work to your plate, but can someone, at their convenience, research that, just to see how much that would be? Does that sound fair, Trustee Pennington?
Could we also have an assessment from staff how well these new mics work in terms of producing reasonable audio when people watch it on?
Yeah, I think it works
Channel 8
pretty
is-
well when they listen to this, but the problem is that people either speak softly like I do, or they're not at the mic. So if you sit back, you can't. It's a big
Maybe we
mumble.
can cut off the first 10 inches of this thing so we sit closer.
We have to move forward.
My thinking is that we should have like Madonna and you can have a little headset.
But we considered that
That would be Lady
got
Gaga.
the-
Or Lady Gaga.
way of
Yeah, maybe.
the material you put in front of you, but we can definitely.
Once again, I don't want to spend 25 hours of staff time looking into that, but
Yeah, just.
if that sounds fair.
It's me, it's Denver.
Anything else to come before the board this evening?
You've been asking.
Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Denver.